Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar series, Introduction to Cost Pricing Strategies. My name is Kusa Holloway, and I am the Virgin Islands Economic Development Authority's Incubator Program Manager. And tonight we have with us Mr. JohnHope of Sft Solutions, and he will be presenting this webinar today. We hope that you are able to get some key strategies out of this particular webinar. And we hope that it'll help you to build your business, expand your business, and also just help you to fine tune those little things within your business that maybe you thought, oh, maybe I should be doing this or shouldn't be doing that. We hope you enjoy our webinar series this evening, and thank you so much for participating. Also, the slides and also the recording will be posted on our website before the end of the week. So if you missed anything or you need to revisit or you think that there's something here that would be of a benefit to someone else, it will be available for your viewing pleasure later on. Jed, take it away.
All right, thanks a lot, Kusa. Good evening, everyone. We have a relatively smaller group today. I think it's around 10 people. So please feel free to ask questions as we go along. If something doesn't just pop automatically, please feel free to stop me and I'll make sure to take my time and make sure that everyone gets it. So first off, this class is brought to us by the USVI Economic Development Authority. The EDA has been around for over 50 years. And their goal is to attract, develop, and retain quality business in the Virgin Islands community. As part of that mission, the EDA has trained hundreds of entrepreneurs in training seminars like these on how to improve their business operations. So thank you for the EDA for putting this on, especially this year, given COVID and everything. Everyone's being asked to do more with less. So it's great that the EDA is helping, and doing whatever it can. A little bit more about Sft Solutions. Sft Solutions was founded in 2017 by myself, headquartered in Christiansted, Virgin Islands. I have over 30 years of entrepreneurship, business, and management experience. A little bit more about me. I grew up in Frederiksted, graduate of the Good Hope School, got a degree in engineering at the University of Delaware. I used to work summers at the refinery. I came back in 2010 and I was running a business out of the refinery for a multinational corporation. I went back to business school and got an MBA. I felt like I needed that to round out my skill set. I knew a lot about engineering, but I did not know a lot about, like the management and, finance behind running a business. I spent a good deal of time in corporate working for a few multinationals. But I've always been an entrepreneur. I started my first business when I was 6, down in Hannah's Rest. Me and one of my cousins used to run a fruit stand. And, on any given Saturday, we'd make about $100. And that was a lot of money to a 6-year-old kid. And I've always had that entrepreneurial itch. Right now, I maintain a couple different companies of my own, of course, Sft Solutions, Business World, and I also run a venture fund called Twin City Capital. Other professional facts about myself: I am a former professional engineer, certified Lean Six Sigma Sensei, which essentially means that I go around to businesses helping them improve efficiency. I am the current vice chairman of the Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority Governing Board, and I am a trustee at the Good Hope Country Day School. So the agenda for this evening, our time together is going to be split over 2 modules. The first, we're going to kind of set a foundation for the fundamentals of pricing. And in the second module, we're going to dive a little bit deeper, roll up our sleeves and talk about pricing in practice, talk about things like common pricing strategies. And then later on in that discussion, we're going to talk about the relationship between pricing and psychology, which I find fascinating. We're going to wrap up with a quick discussion on greed. And then we're going to summarize everything. And then probably the last hour of the class or so, we are going to have a panel discussion with a couple entrepreneurs. So first off, what are we going to learn here tonight? At the end of this workshop, I hope that everyone leaves as a better thinker about pricing, right? There's no formula that's going to fit all the different businesses that we have represented here. We have, you know, someone with a shoe store, we have someone with a health food store, we have someone with a landscaping business. You know, there's not going to be one pricing formula that you're going to be able to use. But what I do hope to teach you is how to think about strategically pricing your products. So hopefully that's a skill that you can pick up and I can help you hone. And that's a skill that's going to get better over time as you use it. If you are going to remember one thing about this class though, remember that not everyone is your customer. I think a lot of times when we get into trouble pricing, pricing goods or services, we're trying to create a price that works for everyone. And I'm going to show you why that's not a great strategy. Another thing I'd like you to think about as we kind of go through this class, in my experience, entrepreneurs tend to underprice their goods. So if companies increase their price by just 1% and demand remain constant, so if you were able to increase your price by 1% and still sell the same amount of units, your average profits would increase by 11%. That's a big difference, right? I've been working with this one entrepreneur, and just on a suggestion that I made or recommendation that I made, she increased her price by 20% and did not notice any change in volume. So that's money that she was able to put into her pocket at the end of the day. And she was surprised. I mean, I think, you know, we tend to discount the value that we provide in the marketplace. So first off, I always like to start these classes with a real world example, right? So this example is going to talk about Nipsey Hussle. So if you're a music artist, you know, there's a couple different ways you can make money. You can make money from selling albums. You can make money from streaming content, which is relatively new, but it's also not that profitable. You can make money from concerts and touring. You can make money from selling merchandise, right? Album sales is the predominant way, or was a predominant way for music artists to make money. So let's take a look at what that looked like for them, right? So let's say your album was selling for $16. Once you took into account retailers and distributors taking their cut, you're left with about $8, right? Then you back out the cost of the packaging, you're left with about $6. So the artist would receive a royalty of about 11% on the sale of their album, right? But you got to split that with your producer, right? So once you subtract out what the producer made, the artist would get about 8%. So that's an 8% net royalty on a $6 album. That works out to about 48 cents. So for every album sold, artists would typically make about 50 cents. That's insane when you think about it, right? So, you know, going platinum is kind of the benchmark. If you went platinum, which is a huge success and not everyone gets to do it, that artist would make about $500,000. Think about all the albums that you know that did not go platinum. So Nipsey Hussle saw this and was kind of, you know, he was kind of disenchanted with the legacy model in the music business. So he read this book, right? It's called Contagious. But it was basically this guy that decided to sell a small amount of items for a very large price. And, you know, it's about trying to make sure that you generate buzz and you generate value and create value for your consumer. It was actually pretty successful, right? So in 2013, Nipsey launched a campaign called Proud to Pay, and it was you know, designed to reward his most committed fans. So he made $100,000 selling 1,000 copies of his mixtape for $100 each. Jay-Z himself bought 100 copies. So 1,000 copies, $100 each for that CD, and he made $100,000. And he did that in 24 hours. It was a crazy success, right? So what can we learn from Nipsey Hussle's strategy? One, you got to be bold, right? You got to do what's best for your business, even when people think that you're crazy. Two, you got to be creative. Three, you got to be different. You can't make more money than everybody else doing the same thing as everybody else. You can also learn from other industries, right? So he got this idea from the $100 Philly cheesesteak that was mentioned in that book. And last, you got to measure success in your own way. Are you trying to generate more revenue? Are you trying to be the first to do something? Are you trying to create a really authentic experience? How are you going to measure success? So And think about that, and you can say, well, wow, that's big time, right? Like we're here in the Virgin Islands, right? Here's a Virgin Islands example. I know everyone has bought a T-shirt here in the Virgin Islands, right? We just did an apparel forum a couple weeks ago, and that if you guys didn't get a chance to check that out, please make sure to join in on the next one. I don't know when that is, but Kusa could probably shed some light on that later. But it was a great discussion, right? And we spent some time talking about the anatomy of the $25 T-shirt in the Virgin Islands. So here's the example. Let's say they're selling a T-shirt for $25. We're going to assume that the cost of that T-shirt, getting the design printed on it and everything, costs $10. Labor, $3. The cost for the salesperson to be in the store, having that shirt sold to that customer costs about $3 in labor. Shrinkage, which happens in every retail store, aka theft, we estimate that to be about $2.50. Shipping, as we know, is expensive in the Virgin Islands. Rent, overhead, which is the cost of WAPA and things like that. Then you got to pay your gross receipts taxes. Then you got to advertise a little bit. Then there's also what's called trapped cash, right? Let's just say that person, that entrepreneur spent $50,000 getting that business going, right? There's money caught up in inventory, there's money caught up in rent deposits and things like that. You also need to earn a return on that money, or you might as well just let it stay in your bank account. Then by the time you take out the credit card fees and taxes, that T-shirt entrepreneur is left with 95 cents. You have to sell a lot of T-shirts at $25 to make any sort of money. So think about that as you run your own business, right? Do you want to do all this work for 4% profit? These are some of the assumptions that I made to come up with those numbers. You can take a look at them. Everyone will get the slides from this presentation, but they're pretty reasonable assumptions. I think they were actually quite conservative. But long story short, if you're selling $25 T-shirts all year, that works out to an owner's salary of about $11,000 per year, or $5.50 per hour. Now, think about this, right? To do that same work, but if you're selling a $100 pair of jeans, the numbers, a lot of them would stay the same. Some of them would change. Obviously, the cost of the pair of jeans would increase. But at the end of the day, you're left with $27. So you're essentially doing the same amount of work, but you get 28% profit. My point here is that the Virgin Islands is a small community, and it's a volume game. So you need to sell higher price goods or sell higher margin products. We have 100,000 people here spread over, 3-4 islands, right? So we have to make sure that since we don't have volume in our favor, we have margin and we have, high, what we call the lumpiness of sale, how big the sale is in our favor. So a few concepts to understand before setting prices. All businesses have to maximize profits. Why? Because of bankruptcy, right? You're not going to do anyone any good if you're bankrupt. Probably the most important reason, though, is because as entrepreneurs, our economic livelihood depends on it. We're always the last one to get paid. So you've got to make sure that there's profit there at the end of the day for us to take home and feed our families. Now, don't get me wrong, there's other concerns such as environmental, labor standards, social welfare, things like that. But there's a limit to how much individual entrepreneurs can endeavor to that goal without a government mandate. So our goal as entrepreneurs is to maximize profit. And like I said, at the end of the day, it's very important to us because we're often the last one to get paid. So if profit maximization is the foundation of good business strategy, then a good business strategy is going to do one of three things. It's either going to increase revenue, decrease costs, or increase the number of units sold. But profit maximization by itself is not a strategy, just like good health isn't a strategy, right? What are the underlying activities that you're going to do that are going to lead to good health? Are you going to go to the gym 4 days a week? Are you going to eat healthier? Things like that, right? So you have to start thinking about what are the underlying business decisions that you're going to use to increase revenue, decrease costs, or increase the number of units sold. So here's an example of how you can use pricing strategically. So for example, this shoe, the starting price is $54, but The retailer is letting you get a lower, letting you obtain a lower price for the good by offering different, deductions, right? So the price is a little bit cheaper if you opt out of free returns. It's also a little bit cheaper if you pay by debit card instead of credit card. And you can understand why that's important to the retailer, right? Free returns might be free to the customer, but of course that comes at a cost to the business. The business has to pay for shipping back and forth, right? Same way, using a debit card, the fees are cheaper than if the customer were to use a credit card. So there's different ways that you can price your good to incentivize customers to do one thing or another. Another concept we want to understand is the difference between products and services. We talked about this a little bit before when we were trying to figure out, who was sitting in on the class today, but products are tangible goods that can be consumed now or later. Services are intangible, and it's usually associated with management, experiences. It's usually trading labor or trading hours for money, right? Some businesses, though, are a mix of both, right? So the restaurant industry is a great example of a business or an industry that both offers a product and a service. The hamburger is a product, but the service and the experience that you get is a service, right? So think about those two and how it blends together to form the overall offering in the restaurant industry. Next, we want to talk about the difference between price and cost. Cost is the actual money spent by the business on making or acquiring the good, and price is the amount that the customers pay. And the difference is what we're going to call margin, right? So margin includes things like rent, bank fees, gross receipts, taxes, some of the things that I laid out as I was going through the anatomy of the $25 t-shirt. So you have to make sure that there's enough margin in there to cover your expenses, plus take some profit home and put it in the bank. Another concept to understand is the difference between fixed costs and variable costs. Fixed costs are costs that the business are going to incur no matter what, right? The cost of a business license, the cost of rent, right? That's a fixed cost. Variable costs vary with production, right? So WAPA, for example, the more hours your store is open, the more your WAPA bill is going to be. Next concept to understand is the relationship between price and profit margin. They're tied together at the hip, right? The more you charge, the more profit you're going to be able to reap. But obviously, there's a limit to that, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But this is a typical profit and loss statement. You start with revenue and you work your way down to profit once you back off the various expenses associated with running the business. So the profit margin percent is just profit over revenue, and the gross margin percent is gross margin over revenue. And we'll talk about these things in detail as we go through our time together this evening. The next concept to understand before setting price is the law of demand. We all know this intuitively, but as we lower price, we're able to sell more goods. And as we raise price, we sell less goods. So it's an inverse relationship between the two. Price goes up, quantity goes down. Price goes down, quantity goes up. Pretty simple. Any questions? This is the end of the first section. So we just wanted to set the table before diving into some other concepts. All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the 4 Ps. This is really the foundation for all marketing activities, right? So product, price, promotion, and place, they all kind of have to come together to create that, to create a sale, right? So they all have to complement each other. So as an entrepreneur, you have to offer the right product in the right place with the right promotion at the right price. Let's talk about the first one. So when we're talking about product, you have to think about what do your customers want and how does it differ from competing products, right? What's your brand? What's the quality? What's the packaging? Why is your customer seeking out this good and why are they not getting it from a competitor? Next, you want to think about the place, right? Where are buyers going to interact with your product? Is it going to be online? Is it going to be in store? Are there established price points for that good or service, in that marketplace? So prices online tend to be a little cheaper than prices in store. Why? Because switching costs are higher for the consumer once they're at a retail location. It takes a little bit more to jump in a car and go from one store to another to look for a cheaper price. But online, it's as simple as picking up another browser window and searching to see what else everybody else is offering that product for. So a lot of times when marketing, you have to take into account where you're marketing this good. Promotion. When and where will your customers get the message, right? Are they going to get it through emails? Are they going to get it by, taking a look at a billboard as they drive by the highway? Things like that, right? Where exactly are they going to interact with your promotion? Price. This is where the rubber meets the road, right? You always want your customers to believe that they're getting good value. And we'll talk about that later. But what are the discounts? What are the payment plans? What are the credit terms? What is the retail price? These are all things of concern to the buyer and things that you have to take into account when you set the price. A lot of folks tend to use cost plus markup, but during this class, we're going to try to sell you on the concept of value-based pricing. And that's, I think, where everyone wants to be. So here's an example, right? So if we were selling selling sandwiches to someone in the Virgin Islands, a young lady with locks, this is how I would think about the 4 Ps. We would want an organic veggie burger topped with hummus using high quality ingredients, right? I would probably place this promotion in a public park during a reggae concert. And I would offer this probably around a $15 price point. That's how I would go about selling a veggie burger to someone in this demographic. Now, as I mentioned, all of those 4 things have to intersect for the marketing campaign to be a success. So the right product in the right place, using the right promotion tactics, and at the right price. Now, here's another example, right? If you're selling a sandwich to this gentleman in this dapper suit, I would think about it a little differently, right? So I would say, this client is probably looking for a burger with high-end ingredients, right? Truffles, fancy cheeses, things like that, right? I would probably advertise at a fancy hotel at a golf club. I would probably put an ad on the side of a golf cart because after you play a few rounds, you're probably hungry. And I would probably try to sell at a much higher price point, right? I would offer that sandwich for $35. So even though we're selling sandwiches, right? The first client was different than the second client. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today is knowing exactly who your client is and what their interests are. Any questions? You guys are very quiet tonight. Kusa, are you still there? All right. Cheryl, Shandis, Magali.
Still here.
Still here.
Everyone is just so quiet tonight. I just making sure that you guys are still with me. All right. So a few important considerations when setting price. The first question is, who is your customer, right? So if I were to open a vet business in St. Thomas, a bad answer would be all adults who live on St. Thomas. A good answer would be non-married residents of Red Hook between the ages of 18 and 45 who make more than 70 grand a year, who live in a house with little outside space and has a dog and a cat. Do you guys see the difference between those 2 answers and how knowing exactly who your customer is or who you're targeting can lead to better results as far as pricing and marketing? All
Yes.
right. All right. All right. You guys, please speak up. Please speak up. Then you have to consider what channel you're selling to, right? We talked about this a little bit before. There's online marketplaces, there's retail sales, catalog sales. You have to consider what the norms are of that medium when you're crafting your marketing campaign. Then you have to think about what you're selling, and really you got to use power words to sell your business or sell your products. You make sure to use nice flowery language such as amazing or eye-opening. My favorite is always reading some of these real estate magazines, and it will, they always have some piece of property that you pass, and they will use the best language, the most flowery language to sell a piece of property. And every time you pass by, you're like, wow, that place is a dump. So take some cues from them. Then it's also important to understand where you play in the market that you're operating in. Are you the high value provider? Are you the low cost provider? Why are people choosing to do business with you instead of your competition? And I think we all have to take a hard look in the mirror and figure out where we compete in our marketplace. One of my previous bosses used to say, you're either cheap, good, or quick, right? You either have the best product, you have the lowest price, or you're the most convenient to do business with. So we all as entrepreneurs have to figure out which one of those we are and maximize that, because that is the value that we add. Next, you have to think about substitutes, right? So we can't price our goods in a vacuum, right? Because customers always have options, right? They were spending that money before you went into business, and they're going to be spending that money long after you're out of business, right? So direct substitutes, examples of that are, say, Pepsi and Coca-Cola, PlayStation and Xbox. Indirect substitutes would be dancing and bowling, or bowling and video games. Another thing you want to consider when setting your price is the switching costs. We talked about this a little bit before, but what is the cost for the consumer to go get another product, service, or supplier? So switching costs on, say, vehicles are very high, right? To switch from a Honda to a Toyota, you got to sell your Honda, then get your finances together and go get a Toyota, right? So the switching costs are very high. But say buying a Johnny Cake in the Village, switching costs are very low. So you have to take that into account as you price your Johnny Cake or whatever you're selling in the Village, because literally the consumer can walk from booth to booth to get a better price. The last thing you really want to consider is whether the good is perishable or seasonal. Obviously, the goal is to sell all of whatever product that is before it expires or it goes bad. So you have to take that into account. Obviously, that's why milk is a little bit cheaper, right before it's about to expire. So to get you guys involved a little bit, I have a few price setting exercises. Same thing we talked about, who's your customer, through a channel are you selling, market positioning. Does someone want to take this example and kind of run through how they would think about it? Nicole Knight.
Really, Jed, you're gonna call me out like that?
Yeah.
I am so multitasking right now. I've got like an AirPod in one ear, I've got you in the other, and I'm getting text messages with things I have to get back to my coworker. So I would love to jump in, but I can't.
Oh, gosh. Kay, Tarek, anyone want to jump in and take this exercise? All right. So I'll do the first one. Hopefully somebody takes the next one. But so if you're selling diapers, I am going to guess that it is somebody between the ages of or couples between the ages of 20 and 40. Through what channel are you selling? Well, typically in retail, but now with Amazon and being able to buy things ahead of time online, that might be an avenue as well. What are we selling? One might say you're selling diapers, but you're not. You're selling convenience. Cloth diapers have been around for a long time, but no one likes to use them, right? So you're selling the convenience or the ability for the consumer to not have to wash out their cloth diapers every time their loved one needs to go to the restroom. What are the substitutes? Like I said, cloth diapers are a substitute. What are the switching costs? The switching costs are relatively low. And is the offering perishable or seasonal? Neither. It's pretty flat. Demand is pretty flat year round. So that's how I would dissect, selling disposable diapers. Does someone want to take the next exercise? Okay. Gail. All right, I'll take this one too. So if we're selling life insurance.
Hi, Jeff.
Yeah.
Again, this is Katisha. I joined late, so I'm really trying to play catch up.
No problem.
I can try. I
Sure.
missed some of the slides that you did on some of the things. So,
Yeah.
but I can try.
Sure.
All right, who's the customer? So more than likely, you could get life insurance early, but let's just say it's seniors, maybe, let's start maybe say 45 to about, don't want to say 70 because that's when they start rejecting you. So maybe about 45 to about 65, 68, somewhere there before you turn 70.
Okay. And what channel would you sell these through?
So typically when you're dealing with older people, I mean, you have baby boomers too. So you can do online, but you know, older people like face to face. So maybe have an office where people can come into. Just a combination thing, so they can actually come in, or you go to them. You can schedule an appointment to go to their home. So calling them, scheduling an appointment. For the more savvy baby boomers, maybe have the option of them, you know, having a site where they can compare life insurance and then like contact you with questions or whatever.
Okay.
What are you selling? Life insurance policy, whether it's whole life or term life insurance.
I would say that you're selling peace of mind there.
Oh, okay, peace of mind. Yes, I was just gonna say, you know, after you pass, then your family would, you know, have the funding to cover your burial and whatever other expenses or whatever that comes with it. And what is your market positioning? So that one I'm not sure of. So what is market positioning?
It depends, and I think that goes back to your previous question or your previous answer, where you're talking about who is the customer. So if if someone for whatever reason was buying life insurance at the age of 20 years old, you'd probably position that on online, right? Versus if
okay, I got it now.
At 70 years old, you definitely want face to face. But I guess underscoring all of this is that you probably buy life insurance when you are worried about let's say you are the breadwinner for the family, and you're worried about your loved ones post your time on earth. So that's I think that's the overarching concern when someone goes out to buy.
Okay, so I think I got the market positioning term or what that means. Okay, I think I do.
Okay.
What are the substitutes? So what are some substitutes for life insurance policy? Maybe those hospital or disability insurance. That could be a substitute, I guess.
Yeah. You can just stack up a lot of cash and dispose of it.
Exactly. Yes. Put the money under your mattress or something like that.
Yeah.
Or and then what are the switching costs? So switching from, I just want to make sure I understand the concept.
Okay.
Switching from what? So what, if you don't mind explaining that?
Sure, from one life insurance policy to another.
Okay. They could be significant because depending on your age and your gender, it could be more, as well as your health. So if you have a life insurance policy that you're okay with, you want to try to keep up with your premiums.
Great point.
Because when you switch, they may now require you to do a health assessment. And if you don't pass the health assessment, you may not be able to obtain that policy, depending on if you have pre-existing conditions. So it could be pretty hefty if you decide to change. And if you are able to get the new policy, it may be at an increased cost.
Very good. The last one, perishable is seasonal?
Well, human beings are perishable, so I don't know how to really answer that question. But life insurance, it's something that you need always, I think, until it's that time. So I don't think it's seasonal. I think, I don't know. Yeah, I'm stuck on this.
I would say it's perishable because you touched on it before. It gets more expensive as we get older, right? So it's everyone knows that death is inevitable. So it is, there is some attractiveness to being able to sell it to younger people, and life expectancy is 75, and you're able to sign someone up at the age of 20. you're probably going to offer them a steep discount, right? So that's something to take into account as you price, life insurance for a 20-year-old versus a 70-year-old.
Yeah, it's cheaper, but the problem, because I work in insurance, sorry, full time. So the thing is that even though it'd be cheaper for younger people, younger people often always say I'm healthy, or they may feel they're invincible. So oftentimes they don't really buy it. So.
Yeah. So yeah, I did not know you were an expert. You probably that's why you jumped in here. But great job leading everybody through that. Thanks for the time.
Sure, no problem.
Nope. Next one, we have one more. Anyone want to take this one? What if we were selling private space travel? Anyone? All right, I'll do this one. The last one I'm going to do. Who's your customer? Probably someone with a lot of money. I'm going to guess someone that's probably a little older. Through what channels are you selling? It would have to be online. I don't think you'd be able to generate enough foot traffic for paying customers in a retail location. What are you selling? You're selling something very exclusive that not a lot of people are going to be able to do. You're selling adventure, so exclusivity and adventure. What is your market positioning? Well, there's obviously a lot of things that folks can do for adventure or exclusivity, but this has to be on the higher end of the market. This is a once in a lifetime event. What are the substitutes? Yeah, you could go bungee jumping, but it's not going to be anything close to the same experience as private space travel. So I would say that there's little to no substitutes here. The switching cost, they're pretty high. I know Tesla is working on this, and SpaceX is also working on this, but I would guess that if I were the entrepreneur and I were to sign someone up for a journey, I would definitely ask for a deposit. I don't want folks backing out at the last minute. Is the offering perishable or seasonal? It's very perishable, right? Because once that flight is done, it's done. So you've got to make sure to sell as many seats on that flight as possible before that flight takes off. So those are all things that I take into account as I priced, this private space travel excursion. Any questions? That is the end of module 1. Any questions? All right. Well, we will take a 5-minute break and then start with module 2. All right, everyone?
Okay.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Everyone still with us? Kusa, I think you're on mute. I think you're on mute, Kusa. Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, I
We
can hear you.
All right. Yeah, Kusa, I cannot hear you. Can you guys hear Kusa?
No.
No.
Thanks. We're having some technical issues. Just give us a second. All right. I'm gonna charge forward, and hopefully we can get Kusa back here in a second, if you guys don't mind. All right. So now we're gonna talk a little bit more about pricing in practice. We're gonna start off with 10 common pricing strategies. Probably the most famous of all pricing strategies is cost-based. You figure out what your costs are, you mark it up, a certain percentage, and voila, you have your price, right? So here's an example. You make 100 units of a product. It costs you 20 bucks each. So your total cost is $2,000. You know that you want to make a profit margin of 20%. So that's $4 per unit. So you need to charge $24, which is $20 in cost, $4 in profit. That's $24. Your total revenue is $2,400 and your profit is $400. Simple enough, right? This is probably the most common pricing strategy. But what I hope to convince you is that by doing this, you're selling yourself short. You're probably leaving money on the table if you're using cost-based pricing. The reason we do it is because it's easy, right? It's easy to figure out what our costs are and just bada bing, bada boom, come up with a price, right? Here's an example of how you can easily figure out what your costs are, because this is something that some folks, have some questions on. But my recommendation be, step one, gather all of your bills for the year. If you don't have bills, estimate what they're going to be. Separate your bills into different categories and then divide by 12. Count the number of items you sell each year. Divide the total from step 2 by step 3, right? So if you have QuickBooks will make this very easy to do. Once you have all those numbers, add that to your cost of goods sold. So here's an example. Let's say you're selling whatever, t-shirts, I think we have a health food store here. We have a shoe store. So on top of, say, the price for a pair of shoes, you would add, you have all of these different costs that you incur, and you have to figure out how to add that price to each good to make sure that you're making margin on each good, right? So you know what your rent is, you know what WAPA is, you know what labor is, you know what your business license costs, you know what insurance costs. And let's say you sell 1,250 items per month, right? So you take that annual number, divide it by 12. you get the monthly, your monthly expense. You take that monthly number and you divide by 1250. So that's the amount that you would need to tack on to each good to cover each one of those items. Make sense? Pro tip is always round up. Does someone have a question? All right. So if you were going to come up with the price for this good, let's say you paid $10 for the good. And then on the last page, I showed you how to calculate all of your different overhead expenses per unit, right? The last thing I want to remind you is to always account for shrinkage. Every retail store has some element of theft, whether it's internal or it's external. I guarantee it's happening. So you might as well account for it upfront, right? The last thing you want to do is get to the end of the day, or get to the end of the year, and there's no money for you to put in your pocket. And so once we add all of those up, we get to a, kind of a starting price of roughly $20. But there are a couple of different things we need to take into account. Credit card fees, right? Let's estimate that as well. Gross receipt taxes, corporate taxes. We have to put some money aside for taxes, right? So, once you add those, you get to a price of around 26 bucks. And I would say everything above that is profit, right? So pick a price that makes sure you get a decent amount of profit for your good. Another thing we're going to talk about later in the class is use charm prices, which means end your price in a 9, a 99, or a 95. Why? Psychology has shown that consumers love those numbers, right? I dare you to find a sophisticated retailer, whether it be Apple, Samsung, Best Buy, that doesn't use this strategy when pricing goods. For some reason, our mind thinks that it's so cheap when it's really, it would be the same pricing, a MacBook from Apple at $1,500 or $1,499. $1 is not that big of a difference, but for some reason, we tend to favor the $1,499 price. They've even done studies where, they ended, say, the good in a 7 instead of a 9, and people still went with the higher price item. It makes absolutely no sense, but it doesn't need to make sense, just do it, right? Round up to the nearest 9. That's my recommendation. The last thing I did real quick here was check the profit margin, the gross margin percentage. I don't think a healthy business can survive without a gross margin percentage of 65% or more. So basically the cost of the good that you're selling can be no more than 35% of the final price. That's another recommendation. The next thing, the next common pricing strategy is competitor-based pricing. You basically take a look around at all the competition and see what the marketplace can bear. You have to ask yourself, who's your competition? And then you also have to assume that your competitors have done all the work to detail their pricing, right? So I would not take that for granted in the Virgin Islands. So
can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. It looked like I fixed whatever the issue was. My apologies, everyone.
No problem, no problem. Did you have a question, or should I just keep going?
No, you can keep going. At the end of this module, we'll engage with some questions to make sure everyone is following along and they don't have any questions for you as well.
Okay. All right. So competitor-based pricing, pretty simple to go out and take a look and see what everybody is charging, and try to slot your price in, whether on the high end or the low end. Obviously you have to take a look in the mirror and figure out how you differ from your competitors. The con to this strategy is it could be difficult to sustain if you're a smaller retailer, right? Lower prices mean lower profit margins. So you have to have the volume. And as mentioned before, in the Virgin Islands, we don't really have volume in our favor a lot of times. So here's an example of competitor-based pricing. Let's say I was selling t-shirts. I looked online, Nike is selling t-shirts for $35, Adidas for $28. And I looked around and various local vendors are selling t-shirts between $15 and $20. I would say maybe $25 is a fair price. But as I showed you guys with the anatomy of the $25 t-shirt, there's not a lot of money to be made selling t-shirts at $25. So I would say sell on the higher end of the spectrum, right? You think about a $35 shirt from Nike, by the time you add shipping, by the time you add all those other things, it's going to be, plus you have to wait a week or two to get it. It's going to be more to the consumer than $35. So I would try to slot my price in at or near, maybe even above Nike. But you have to create that value, right? Why would, all things equal, why should the consumer buy your t-shirt instead of one from Nike? The quality has to be there. The brand story has to be there. Those are all things that you have to work on as an entrepreneur to justify your price. The next pricing strategy that I want to talk about is skim pricing. This is essentially starting the price of the good out really high, and then over time, gradually bringing it down. So this is popular in the video game market. Anytime the PlayStation comes out at a ridiculous price point, and then gradually over the course of the next couple of years, they're trying to move more units. So they sell it for progressively lower prices, right? Some of the things you want to think about with this pricing strategy is how are initial purchasers going to feel. They're going to be thrilled because they feel like they're in this club that no one yet is a part of. So it's a good way to reward your best customers. Then you also have to think about how quickly competitors can react. Is this something that someone can copy or will want to copy? And are you risking market share by letting your competitors see what you're doing and have time to mimic it? And so probably a good example of this would be selling, let's just say you're selling I'm going to use the example of a clothing company. You're selling t-shirts around Carnival. And let's say, when the t-shirts first drop, you're going to sell them for a lot, right? Let's say you start out selling them at $45 a shirt. But over the course of the year, everyone's seen the design. It's not as exclusive anymore, but everyone loved it. But over the course of the year, you gradually lower price until Christmas of the next year, when you are coming out with a whole new design. And at that point, you're just trying to get rid of the shirts, whatever inventory you have left. Next pricing strategy is penetration pricing. So you basically use a cheap price to get people on board or get people familiar with you, your product, or your service, and then gradually raise prices over time. Sometimes that's essential, right? Like, let's imagine you're a new landscaping company. I know we have somebody like with that business in class. There are a lot of landscaping companies out there. So for someone to switch from whoever is currently cutting their grass right now to a new company, you might have to entice them, right? You might have to say, what, let me try this one time. Let me show you what I can do. And if you're happy with, with the way that I perform, then we can do business together on a regular basis, right? But let's just say that someone is charging them $100 a month to do their grass. You probably aren't going to be able to charge them $150 to begin with. You're probably going to have to undercut that person that's doing it at $80, with the hope of over time you can get up to $100 or even above $100 once you start doing business with this client and really satisfying their needs. So a good example of this is Netflix. Here is a graph of how Netflix pricing has trended over time. When Netflix was a new commodity and competing with Redbox and Blockbuster and who else in the marketplace, they were at $7.99. And if you follow this middle line, you can see over the course of time, they have pretty much doubled their price, right? So everyone knows Netflix now, but in the beginning, they essentially had to buy market share to convince customers to use their platform. And now they're a resounding success. So discounting is an effective strategy. But you have to be careful with it though, because the more you discount your products, the more customers are going to expect those discounts. So while you might give a discount to get someone on your platform or using your service or product, you don't want to constantly offer discounts because that may not fit with your brand reputation. And the next thing we're going to talk about is loss leader pricing. So loss leader pricing is when you offer kind of a hook to a consumer to get them in the store or on your platform, knowing that even though you didn't make any money on that first good, they're going to buy other things and you're going to be able to make money on those goods. So a great example of this would be, you know, offering a $9.99 turkey around Thanksgiving, right? Because you know that if I'm a supermarket and I sell you a turkey for $9.99, I got you in the store, but you're gonna pack your basket with a bunch of other goods that I'm gonna be able to make money on, right? Everybody could tell you like a Thanksgiving shopping is probably $200 worth of food. So the supermarket is very happy if they basically gave you the turkey at cost, but then they were able to make a bunch of money on everything else that was in your basket. So loss leader pricing is good to get folks in, but you have to use it strategically, right? If that customer just walks in, buys that turkey and walks out, you lose. The entrepreneur is the loser, right? Like you just sold them something below cost, and now you're going to have to dig into your pocket to make up for that sale. So I want everybody to remember that, right? Not saying that the $25 t-shirt is a bad idea, but it's a bad idea if that customer walks in, buys a $25 t-shirt and walks right back out the store. You have to make sure that if you're going to sell them that t-shirt for $25, they're buying a pair of jeans that you get to make some money on. They're buying shoes that you're going to get to make some money on. They're buying other things that allow you to put some money in your pocket. The next pricing strategy I want to talk about is high-low pricing. Gap and Old Navy do this extensively. Basically, they attempt to capture both sides of the market. You know that once you go in there, there's going to be something there for you, whether it's on sale or whether it's full price. But they're always having a sale, right? And it's a good strategy if you want to be a jack of all trades and appeal to everybody. But then some customers are turned off by that, and that might not fit what your brand wants to be. So there's a saying, jack of all trades, master of none, right? So if I know that I want consistently high quality goods, the Gap probably isn't my go-to, right? When I think consistent high quality goods, I think of Gucci, I think of Louis Vuitton, I think of people like that. I do not think of the Gap. Everyday low pricing. This is a strategy that Walmart uses. Walmart constantly keeps their suppliers and vendors in check, and even employees in check, just so that they can offer the lowest price possible every year, every day to every consumer. One of my friends used to work for Walmart, and one of the things that they would do is, say they had an RFP on the street, they were trying to buy widgets from a manufacturer. They would have everyone respond to the RFP. Then they would invite everybody to their headquarters in Arkansas. And while sitting around the conference room table, they would have every single one of their vendors have a reverse auction right in front of them. So one person bid $100, the next person is bidding $99, and all of the vendors would sit there and basically bid themselves out of profit. That's a tough strategy. It makes Walmart can do it because Walmart does it in so much volume, but even still, that's not a great stance to take with your business partners, right? Because you can think about, there's no loyalty in that game. At the end of the day, you want the people that are working with you to make money as well. So if that's your strategy, you have to understand that that's your strategy, and you're going to constantly and consistently have to be offering the lowest price, because consumers are fickle, right? As soon as someone else offers a price that's lower than yours, that consumer is going to jump from you to your competition. So you have to constantly and maniacally, seek out cheaper expenses. Another pricing strategy we're going to talk about is anchoring. So basically, you provide the customer with additional information to show that what they're getting is a good deal. So here in this example, this picture here, you can see that they're trying to nudge you towards a center choice. It's not the cheapest, it's not the most expensive, but it just visually and based on the information that's given to you, you can tell that you're getting a good deal. The pro of the strategy is that if your list price is much higher than the sale price, it can influence your customer to make a purchase based on the perceived deal. But the con about this is you have to make sure that you're being genuine with your customers, right? If you show them a price that, say, in this example here, that's $79, and then they do some internet research to figure out that the competition offers it for 40, you're going to lose that customer forever. So you have to make sure that the information that you're putting out there to anchor the customer is truthful. Another common pricing strategy is the freemium pricing model. You basically offer a bare bones, no frills product, and then you upsell the customer every step of the way, right? Someone that uses this strategy with a lot of success is Spirit Airlines. There's a price to get on the plane, but there's a different price if you want to choose your seat. There's a different price if you don't want to stand in line. There's a different price if you want to sit down. So that can be a good strategy depending on who you are and what your business is, because it helps you, it helps you acquire users and boost your market share. But the con is nothing is for free, right? So think about how else you can monetize. At the end of the day, you don't want to be in a situation where customers are that price conscious. You want to be on value-based end of the spectrum. The last is value-based pricing. This is the last pricing strategy we're going to talk about. And basically, you price based on perceived value. So you have to think about what tangible economic benefit are you offering to the consumer. You got to think about how you can communicate the value of that offering. And are you willing to do the work to figure out what that value is and translate that value to the consumer? So one of the pros of this is it helps you serve different markets, right? So you have a low cost option and a high cost option. But you also have to be wary about doing damage to your brand by offering two competing products in the same marketplace. Any questions on any of these pricing strategies? Before we move on.
There has to be at least one question. There's a lot of information that Jed has been putting out to the group. Is the information being received? Is it so clear that there's no questions? Talk to us a little bit.
Gail Caldwell, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Gail.
Is there a particular one of the pricing that you laid out that would pertain to meals, a cook shop or a bakery?
Yeah, I mean, lots of them. So first would be, we started with cost base. That's the easiest, right? It's easy to figure out what all your costs are, add them up, figure out how many meals you're going to sell, and then come up with a price, right? It's also easy to look at what your competition is doing and say, well, if I'm going to sell a hamburger, these are other companies that are selling hamburgers, and this is what I should charge. I guess that it would be about $20 for a hamburger. Skim pricing might work for a special event. So let's say you had some burger with, if you're not speaking, can you please put your phone on mute? There's some background noise. I would say skim pricing would work at, say, something like Carnival, where it's like a day event, and you are selling food. Maybe you start off with your price real high in the morning, and as the crowd kind of subsides, you lower your pricing. Penetration pricing. If you're a new restaurant, you have to entice customers to come to your store. So you could start with a low price and gradually raise your prices over time. Loss leader pricing. This is something else that you can employ. You can say, you know what, 50 cents Johnny Cakes, right? Because when they come in, they're gonna want to buy a chicken leg without Johnny Cake.
Okay. All right. Yes.
High-low pricing. Let's just say you're offering you have a grilled cheese sandwich and you also have callaloo, right? You have something for everybody. You got something on both sides of the spectrum, right? Everyday low pricing, I probably would not recommend that for a restaurant. I just wouldn't recommend that. I'll just leave that there. Anchoring, you want to show people the value that you're creating. So there's, I guess, in your marketing materials or the way you lay out your menu, you could show them how good of a deal, the $20 burger is.
Yes.
Freemium, everybody gets free water. I don't know.
Maybe.
I'm trying to think of a good example. Yeah, I don't think.
Or what some restaurants do, they build like they have meal prices and they build the drink into the meal. So you're really paying for the meal, you're paying for the drink anyway, but
Right.
because it's not an actual added cost, upfront added cost, they feel like they're getting something for free. So freemium pricing could work too.
Yeah, exactly. I got another example I thought about was Kids Eat Free. So that is freemium pricing right there, right? So yeah, if a bunch of 2-year-olds want to walk in off the street, we'll serve them. But usually they're there with an adult that's buying a meal, and you're going to make some money off of the full paying.
Or even an example is the coffee is free, but you pay for the cup.
I like that one, Miss Forbes.
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And then the last one will be value-based pricing. So, maybe you have a burger with no frills, and you offer that at say 10, but then, your premium burger, you offer at 20. And, customers are going to have to decide whether they want the burger with no cheese and no ketchup and all of that, or the unlimited burger at $20. So, most, 9 out of 10 of these strategies could apply to the restaurant business.
Jed, you know what I've noticed that there's a convenience store very close to where I live here on St. Croix, and they offer free coffee to anyone who comes in. And I, so I always think, why are you giving away free coffee? But guess what? Because they open really early in the morning, they're opening at 5 o'clock in the morning. They get a lot of the refinery workers who come in to get coffee, but because they come in to get coffee, then they're picking up bread, they're picking up a newspaper, they're picking up maybe something for lunch, because sometimes they have little prepared sandwiches already. So, there's different ways that those pricing models could work, because even though, a cup of coffee is what, maybe 20 cents, if that, so you're losing 20 cents to maybe gain $5–10.
Exactly. So that's a great point. What convenience store is that?
That's Morgan's right here in the Barron Spot Mall.
Okay. Yeah. That's a great strategy, and I'm sure they get a lot of business because of it.
Yes, definitely. And because they have people going in there, they sell, if for those of you who are not familiar with Morgan's sells a lot of Down Island products that you can't get in the normal grocery stores. So things that are hard to find, like Iodex and camphor and soft candle and all of those type of things. It just kind of broadens their market reach, because now when people go in there for the free coffee, they see that they have all of these Caribbean products they're selling, so.
Hi, this is Katisha. I have the same sort of question as the young lady asked, but as it pertains to an online, I guess, t-shirt business, since you don't have necessarily the rent. I know there are other factors to consider, but just curious as to which pricing model, I guess, would be best. Not necessarily best, but I guess would be, yeah, I think you know what I'm saying. So
yeah. So I mean, so the first one would be cost plus, right? And that's easy, right? Grab all your bills, figure out what you're spending, and just basically price just above that. My recommendation would be whatever you're selling online, make sure that price is no more than 35% of whatever the retail price is, right? So if you're buying that t-shirt or shoes, what are you selling?
Sorry, I was on mute. Primarily t-shirts.
Okay, so if you're selling a t-shirt for let's make the numbers easy. If you're selling a t-shirt for $100, it can be no more than $35 that you spent buying that t-shirt from the manufacturer. So you can figure out the price just by working backwards. But in this example, if you're going to sell a t-shirt for $29, you can't spend any more than $10.15 on a t-shirt. Fair enough?
Got you. Thank you. That's helpful.
All right.
And Jed, before you go on, would that be all associated costs or just the actual cost of the t-shirt itself?
Just the actual cost of the t-shirt itself. The other 65% is kind of reserved for overhead and markup, overhead and margin.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think it's in most businesses, it's tough to survive above that level. And the apparel business is no different. So the other thing I think you would probably take a look at is competitor-based pricing, figure out who your competition is, and then price, figure out where you're going to play in that market and justify it. So, these were some prices that I grabbed online. But like I said, if your designs are very labor intensive, very creative, everybody knows that you stay fly. There's no reason why you can't price your stuff at or even above where Nike is, right? If they wanted to go buy, they don't want another Nike shirt. They're trying to figure out a reason to buy from you.
So I have a question to that point. So I remember you saying that in the apparel forum, but I think I recall you saying that, if you start, I think you had used a $25 t-shirt as an example.
Right.
And you were saying pretty much if you start at 25, it's kind of hard to then go higher, just bump your without gradually doing so. Yeah. So I think that's where I'm at because I kind of started on those. So, just doing the gradual kind of increase. But, a lesson learned is from this webinar and the prior webinars is, you don't want to sell yourself short. So you want to kind of start higher and then gradually go down, I guess, like you said, for the, what's that game? The Xbox? Yeah, that.
Yeah. No, it's it's hard. It's always easier to lower price than it is to raise price, right? Because consumers, they have a very long memory with respect to price. So my recommendation for you would be gradually raise it no more than 10% at a time. So this year or this month, raise your price. If it's at 25, raise it to 27. Then the next year, raise it again, or the next batch, raise it to 29. You got to do it gradually. You can't go from 25 to 35. You're going to lose a lot of customers that way.
Backing off of the last statement, I think I went backwards because I too sell t-shirts online. Mm-hmm. I initially started my prices at the whole $29.99 because I too know the psychology behind the nines. So I started at $29.99, and then I kind of went down on my prices because I kept having people come to me and ask me, why are your prices so high? Why are your prices so high? So after a while, it started to get to me. So I ended up lowering my prices. But after the last forum, I kind of carried it back up to the price that I originally had it to. So it's kind of, especially when you're comparing yourself to like a Nike and an Adidas, when they are well established and it's a well-known brand, you kind of don't want to, yes, your product may be good, but you don't want to come in, you don't basically want to compare yourself price-wise with an already established, well-established company when you're unknown. So I think that's kind of why a lot of the businesses are like with the $25 price point, because you don't want to really lowball yourself, but then you don't want to highball yourself either. You don't want to make your product more expensive that to the point that other people won't purchase your items, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I got you. But what I'll say to that is, not everybody's your customer, so don't feel pressured or intimidated by someone saying, like your price is too high. Think about most of the things that we want. The iPhone isn't exactly cheap, right? It's, what do they charge? Like almost $1,500 for a phone now. And there's a reason why folks still line up, every time they drop a new product, is because they created that value. So focus on creating value. Never focus on making sure that everybody has access to your good. Like that's, you're going to put yourself out of business that way.
Jed, can I jump in here with just a little something?
Sure.
And you hit the nail on the head. Everyone is not going to be your client. And you really have to be able to, as you accurately stated, you have to find out what's your target market. Who are you going to be really marketing to and getting them to pay that $29.99 or that $30, $35 for a shirt? Now, I stepped away because I wanted to show you guys something. So I purchased something for my kids for Christmas. And this year, my kids and I told them, we're not going to be doing expensive gifts anymore. We're going to think about really thoughtful gifts, about something that that reminds us of when they were kids, or something that we all have in common. My kids and I like to watch old shows together, Cosby, Different World, things like that. So for Christmas, this is what I got my kids. Can you guys see it? Oh, probably not, because I have my background on.
Yeah.
It's give me one.
The Eddie Winslow shirt.
Huh?
The Eddie Winslow shirt.
No, it's not an Eddie Winslow shirt. I'm gonna take off my background for just 1 second, please.
Is it the yeah?
Do you see it now? It says Gordon Gartrell, 1984. Now, anyone who is a Cosby Show fan.
The Cosby Show, that's what it was. I had it mixed
Right.
up. Cosby Show.
Right. There was an episode where Theo wanted his Gordon Gartrell shirt really badly, and it was really expensive, and his parents then bought the shirt, not really realizing how expensive it was, and they made him take it back. And his sister Denise said, "Oh, I can make the shirt. I'm taking sewing in class." And it was a bad idea. Basically, one sleeve was longer than the next. It didn't look anything like the shirt. But that's one of our favorite episodes. And I found this shirt, and it was $30. And first I was like, oh, $30. But because it had a connection for me, I went ahead and bought 3 shirts at $30 a pop. So it's, how do you get that connection to your customers to help them part with that $30 or that $29.99? And it's because I saw someone on a YouTube video with the shirt on, made me go online to look and see where I can get this shirt. Yeah. So I hunted for it for about 6 months before I actually found out where I could get the shirt. So I think it's really about honing in on your target market, really honing in on who's your client, who are you trying to, who are you trying to attract, because they're not going to quibble about the $30 price point or the $35 price point.
Completely agreed. Completely agreed.
I'm sorry.
I think. Oh, sorry.
No, I agree with you, Kusa. Completely agree.
I think with everything that's being said, yes, you know that, not every person is the ideal customer for you. And you go in knowing all of these stuff that you're supposed to know from the very beginning. But I think what plays into it is that when you go in gung-ho and you're so strong and confident in your product, it kind of attacks your psyche that, I ain't getting these sales that I supposed to. Yes, you understand that if it's a new business, you don't expect no profit within the first few years of the business. That's understood. But then now to actually have that feat, to actually be going through it now and seeing like, for real, I really have to wait these couple of years before I start to see some type of profit, or really before I get my business name out there, like for real. And then now you have your friends now on the end, and in one side of your air telling you, oh, your price is them too high. So it's like, it really, attacks your psyche.
Well, so a couple things there, right? So what I would say is, as an entrepreneur, we're always going back and forth, right? Because we want to all be well off and successful in the future, but we got to eat today, right? So it's tough to turn down some cash in the hand on, saying, hey, like, I know that my good is worth more, so I'm not going to sell any today, right? I know that there is a need to get some cash flow. So I think there's ways that you can do it. Maybe you offer a one-time discount or, things like that. I think it's better for you long-term to say, you know what, my shirt is 35, but I'm running a promotion, and for the foreseeable future, I'm marking it down to 27 versus always selling shirts at 27. At least the customer knows that at some point that shirt is going to be $35. It might not be today, but it might be sometime in the future. The other thing I would say is it's kind of weird dealing with friends and business. People unfortunately don't like to see you make money. or not when it's coming from their pockets, right? So you just have to, you know, I think with friends, you kind of have to be even more so like stick to your guns, because, you know, truth be told, I do stuff for my friends for free. But if it's really a friend, they're not going to argue with you about $5 over a t-shirt. You know, they would really be trying to support you. So, you know, so I've even seen some entrepreneurs, they don't tell everybody who the president of the company is or the CEO. They say, oh yeah, I'm just working for this new clothing brand. And that actually works better. It helps them sell things, because then people don't think that they're making all this money off of this shirt or whatever the product is. They try to hide that information from the public. Does that make sense?
Jen, we had some comments in the chat. We had someone suggest doing customer appreciation days. Someone said, in not so many words, the same thing like you said, your friends are not your customers. Allow them to support you differently.
Yep.
Yeah,
customer appreciation days are great. It helps, you know, drive, you know, that deeper relationship with your clients. So I am all for it. Just as long as you're making money at the same time, right? Like, please, you know, drive deep, meaningful relationships with your clients, you know, keep them, you know, apprised of everything that you're doing, you know, and try to interact with them in more meaningful ways, you know, make them feel special, make them feel exclusive. But at the same time, make sure that they dig into their wallets and pay you for the value that you're creating.
Hi, this is Katisha. So to the point about, you know, stick it to your market audience, that's key. And, you know, dealing with your friends and maybe loved ones kind of telling you which direction to go. I know one of my really good friends, you know, she was telling me, you need to send men's clothes, children's. And I'm like, no, that's not my total. You know, I have a target, I have an avatar in my mind as to who it is. And so they don't fit my avatar. So, you know, every time, you know, she tells me this, I always remind her, no, that's not who I'm targeting for now. This is who it is. So I think it's just important to kind of help people, your friends, your loved ones, to understand who you're who you're marketing to, or who your market is, and saying, this is why I'm sticking to it, and maybe explaining the purpose of just understanding and marketing to those particular individuals.
No, that's a great point. I don't know. I mean, most folks here seem to be running some sort of brand or very consumer-facing business. If you haven't already, you know, take the time to craft a mission statement and a vision, and always try to come back to that. You know, anytime, you know, you're going through a situation like this, you know, stay true to who you are and why you started this business. Don't, you know, try not to, you know, waver just because somebody gives you something that was hard to hear. I know it's tough, but, you know, go back to your mission, go back to your vision, and figure out why you're really doing this.
One additional point really quick. So I don't think it was intentional. So I didn't really market my products to say, hey, this is my business. So I didn't do that. And so I kind of got cursed out by some people who eventually found out that that's my business. So I noticed that it worked on one hand, that I did mention, so I got sales. And then when people found out, I was like, oh, for real, that's cool. And then so this weekend I tried something new and direct message some people, because, you know, we upgraded the website and did some changes and so forth. Nonetheless, so I just noticed too, just from direct messaging people, I didn't think I'd get much of any sales, but I did. So I was like, whoa, this is interesting. And somebody was like, is this your business, Katisha? I was like, yeah. They was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to support you. So I guess it works on both ends of the spectrum, but I didn't intentionally not tell people. It just happened. It happened so fast. I was just rolling with the flow, and some people knew and some people didn't know. So
yeah, that's I'm glad you brought that up. That's a good way to engage clients. I was reading an article while preparing for the apparel forum that WhatsApp is one of the biggest sales tool that folks use now to generate traffic on their websites or their business. Like, you know, literally connecting with customers one-on-one, letting them know about different sales. You know, everybody's on WhatsApp now. So that sounds like a good place to do those direct messaging. Any more questions? I think I saw a hand raised from Kibra Emmanuel.
had a question, but someone answered it already. Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else before we move on? All right. Thanks for the questions. So we spent a lot of time talking about pricing products. I want to talk a little bit about pricing services. It's a little bit harder. When you're pricing a service, you're usually trading hours for money, right? So it's like, you can get somebody to cut your yard, and it's all about figuring out what that price is going to be. But that person has to hire somebody to actually sit there and cut your yard for 2 hours. So how do we translate that person's time into a price that everybody thinks it's fair? The steps involved, calculate your costs, look at your competitors, a lot of the same stuff that you would do if you're pricing a product. Determine a fair profit margin, determine a fair hourly rate, and then you got to sanity check it, right? So I said a lot of things there, yada, yada, yada. It's usually on the low end, somewhere between 2 and 3 times what it would cost someone to what it would cost someone to do it directly. So let's going with the example of the cutting the grass. I know that if I was going to pay somebody to cut grass, they would probably charge me about $15 to $25 an hour. For the sake of argument, let's say $25 an hour. That's how much that person's time is worth. And by the time you do the math, they will say, you know what, you need to pay me $50 or $75 to cut your grass. That's typically how it works in services. Think about it as a multiplier of the hourly wage. So if you were to go out and hire somebody to do it, let's just say you're paying them $15 an hour, multiply that by 3 times, and you probably have a good deal. So here's an example here. We could walk through it. A potential client needs project management services for a 6-month project. The client has posted that position for a year, but they were unable to find the ideal candidate. The job was posted at $70,000 a year. And we also know the top project managers in the VI earn $90,000 a year. So you do a little bit of math. There's 2,000 hours in a year, roughly. That works out to about $33.65 an hour. And that is the direct rate, right? To pay someone to sit in that seat 40 hours a week and do that job, you need to pay them, $34 an hour roughly. But then you got to add benefits onto that, right? So it's not just $34 an hour. And if you were the client and you're hiring an employee, then you got to develop them, you got to train them. There's other costs associated with it. So if the client is coming to you and say, you know what, I need a great project manager, but I only want them for 6 months. There's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration while pricing that contract. So my recommendation would be 4 to 6 times salary. Like I know before I was telling you, 2 to 3, but as I said, that's a starting point for negotiations, and I would work my way up from there, right? So for this particular case, based on the different pieces of information that I'm giving you, I would say that this justifies a higher salary or a higher cost of the project. Why? Because of the risk, right? Once you have that contract, you're locked into providing that service for the client, or you're going to get sued, right? So you had to, or if you don't get sued, the client's going to cancel your contract, and you're going to serve some reputational risk associated with getting fired, essentially, right? So at the end of the day, you have to think about it. Well, let's just assume something is going to happen, and there's a lot of things that could go wrong, and putting a new person into an office and not having it go well. Then you also got to think about the short duration of the project. So think about a great, going out and hiring an employee and being like, I only need you for 6 months. So no doubt some people might be willing to do it. Let's just say they were transitioning between jobs or whatnot, but it's going to be harder to find someone just for 6 months than saying, I want to hire you indefinitely, right? The other piece of information that I would take into account was that the position was, they looked for someone. They tried to find somebody for a year and they couldn't find, the ideal candidate for whatever reason, right? So in my mind, I'm thinking, all right, well, since they've already looked, I'm going to have to overturn every single stone to find a good fit for them. I might have to fly somebody in from the States for 6 months, right? So you want to make sure that that's all built into the cost. So I would say, in this example, 4 to 6 times salary would be a good starting point for negotiations. And you can always work your way down. You definitely don't want to start out at 2x salary and all of a sudden, for whatever reason, the first candidate doesn't work out. And then you have to, then you end up eating the cost for switching the candidate out. Does that make sense?
Very much.
All right. So here's an example. If one of you guys want to walk us through this or answer these questions, like how would you think about this, right? There's a client named Monique. She needs a divorce attorney, and it's about a year-long project, but it's only going to take about 4 hours a week. Jane Q. Esquire is a recent Ivy League law school graduate. She went to one of the best schools in the world and came back to the VI because this is where she grew up. Recent clients have paid other law firms $50,000 to $150,000 for this service. So the first question, how many hours? We know that it's going to be 4 hours per week over the course of a year. 52 hours in a year is roughly 200 hours a time. What are the expenses? Just really the labor, but there might be some expenses. There might be some, maybe for whatever reason, Jane needs to travel back and forth to St. Thomas. Maybe the relationship was in the States for a little bit and she needs to go to the courthouse in Georgia to get some information. I don't know, but you might want to put some money in there for expenses. The other thing I would think about is what lawyers typically make per hour, right? And factor that into the scale. I'm going to guess that the Ivy League lawyers are on the higher end of the spectrum. And we gave you the spectrum from 50 to 150,000. So I would guess that, Jane would want to price herself somewhere around $150,000. Does that make sense? All right, I'm losing you guys again.
Makes sense.
All right. We are going to talk about monetization and other pricing objectives. So monetization is how and when you get paid as an entrepreneur. So there are a couple of different ways you can get paid. A lot of folks, it's just one time, here's a transaction, here's your cash, here's your good, never see you again. Recurring, which I like, is, it's kind of like the Netflix model. They are hitting your account every month, whether you use their service or not. It's great if you can get into that type of arrangement with your client. I know some folks on the line are running restaurants or thinking about running restaurant businesses. I always wondered why, with all these pop-up restaurants, the folks that will deliver to you, no one has actually thought about using a recurring model, right? Like, I will bring you food 5 days a week or 3 times a week, whatever you decide, and I will deliver it to you. I just need your agreement, and I'm gonna hit your account every month for $100. Like, that would be a great service. I know a lot of people in the States that sign up for Blue Apron or similar services that will cook for you. I'm surprised that no one here has jumped on that recurring model. The other way to monetize is basically pay based on how much of a good that a customer consumes. So I guess WAPA would be a good example of that. You pay based on how much energy you use. So one time, fairly self-explanatory. Recurring. Here are the benefits of recurring. It's easy to administer, automated receipts, flexible payment method and dates. You guys are well familiar with Netflix. Usage-based. This is some of the same stuff we were talking about with WAPA, but those are the different ways that you can monetize, and it's interesting to play around with the different ways of monetization to maximize your profit. Any question on monetization?
No questions here, thanks.
All right.
No questions.
All right. We're going to talk about, next thing we're going to talk about is like the psychology behind the pricing, right? So cognitive biases, we all use them. This is basically our brain taking shortcuts to make a decision. All right. So the definition is a cognitive bias is a systematic error in thinking that occurs when people are processing and interpreting information in the world around them and affects decisions and judgments that they make. So we often use what's called rule of thumbs to make decisions because we're too tired or we're too lazy or we just have so much else going on that we typically just try to get to a decision quickly. We all do it, right? So the anchoring bias is something that you heard of, we talked about a little bit before. We tend to over rely on the first piece of information that we get. So if you learn that, this shirt is on sale and it's on sale for $20, for some reason, you are looking at the price that it was marked down from. So if it was marked down from $100, you're like, wow, this is a great deal. You never researched that shirt before in your life, but the fact that it was marked down from $100 to $20 tells you that it's a good deal, right? The availability bias, this is another popular one. Events that come relatively quickly to mind are made to, we are made to feel that they are more likely than they are or more representative than they are. My favorite example of this is probably the airplane crash. Airplane crashes are few and far between. They happen about 1 in every billion takeoffs and landings. So 1 in every billion takeoff and landings, there is an airplane crash. But everyone would say, you know what? I am more afraid of an airplane crash than a car crash. And car crashes, unfortunately, happen a ton, all right? Another popular bias is a confirmation bias. So we only tend to pay attention to news articles or information that supports our position. I don't know if any of you guys have been, in a heated debate with a friend or family member recently, and you would Google, whatever that issue was, and you're basically scrolling through Google to find the point that supports your decision. But there's probably lots of information out there supporting the counterpoint as well. So this happens because we have a fast thinking brain and we have a slow thinking brain. We try to put as many things on the highway as possible in our brain. Neurologists estimate that our 5 senses are taking in 11 million pieces of information every second, and we are actually processing only 40 of those things. So one of my people of all time is former President Barack Obama. He would simply say he minimizes small decisions to focus on the big decision. So he only wears blue and gray suits, and that's because he wants to focus on things that, things that really need his mind power. So everybody does this while making decisions. So here's how you can use it when pricing some of your goods. There's what's called the endowment bias. So ownership is powerful, no matter how small, even if it's free, right? So we tend not to like to lose things, right? People hate change. We hate the unknown. It takes, some sort of effort to change from one good to another. So that's why you see a lot of folks offer a free trial for 14 days. And they know that once they get you in their system and liking their product, that you're probably not going to get up and, go to their website and cancel their service. So an example of this would be a supermarket offering free delivery for 2 weeks. And they know once you start, getting accustomed to having your food delivered at home, you're probably going to stick with their system and let them continue to bill you. Another bias that's popular is loss aversion. A win doesn't feel as good as a loss feels bad. And the good feeling doesn't last as long as the bad. Why? We're superstitious. We hate bad luck. We tend to get attached to things. So it's the same thing with the supermarket. Once you get used to that free delivery, you're probably not going to want to give it up. Commitment bias. This is another one. We don't like to be seen as flakes. So the way that you can use this in your business is get customers to commit, no matter how small, right? Just as simple as, they've done studies with doctors' offices. And just by getting someone to write down the date of their appointment themselves, they were able to see a 70% increase in the people that actually made it back for that actual appointment. So you want clients to take ownership of whatever it is, no matter how small. Make them put a meeting on their calendar. Make them commit to your product somehow, even if it doesn't cost them anything. And trust me, it'll pay dividends. Another thing you might want to take into account as you price your goods or you design your product or service is the peak end rule. So we tend to judge experiences as human beings based on the highest satisfaction we received from that good or service and how that good or service ended. So if you think about it, think about a roller coaster, right? We tend to remember the craziest turn that we saw in that roller coaster. And we tend to remember how the ride ended. We don't remember anything in between. We don't remember standing in line for 2 hours to get on that roller coaster. So think about that, especially if you're in a service business. What is the highest peak that that customer is going to experience with you, and how does the meal end, right? You see a lot of restaurants, they'll give you like something after dessert, like a free something just to make you feel a little better as you walk out the door. So think about that. Another thing to think about with regard to the psychology is scarcity creates value. I know that we were talking about this a little bit before on how we want to serve all our customers. Psychology is a weird thing, right? We want that thing that is just out of our grasp, right? So people, we tend to fear missing out. You can't have it, right? Like it's an exclusive thing. You can use this to manufacture demand in whatever business you own. It's a 1-day sale, or we only have 50 left. Nobody has to know that you actually got a storeroom full of these things. You have to create the narrative and create the value. And scarcity is one of those things that creates a lot of value for entrepreneurs. Any question on some of these biases and how to use them? Anyone? Kusa?
None at this.
Someone said no. I don't know what that means. Janelle, you want to elaborate what the no means?
It was just a response to him asking if we had any questions.
Oh, okay.
Can you guys think of some examples where you've seen stuff like this in the marketplace? I mean, every single company does this. They utilize human psychology against us.
I could probably give an example with software.
Mm-hmm.
Norton or AVG would have these instances where you could get AVG tune-up added onto your plan for free for like 30 days. Mm-hmm. And then after that 30-day period, you can cancel. But what we tend to do is we lose track of the time. And then by the time the 30-day period comes by, we just know that we get a charge on our bill because we forgot to actually cancel. But the type of person I am is I like to take advantage of my full 30 days before I actually go into cancel, but then I forget to go in and cancel. So I ended up just getting charged and I ended up keeping it. And then 5 years down the road, every year I'm getting charged for this program.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like that too. I'm actually the worst at it. I'll sign up just for something that I need. Maybe it's a piece of software that I need for the day. And then, 30 days later, I'm looking at my bill. I'm like, oh man, I never canceled after 14 days. So that's popular. I mean, folks make a lot of money doing that, unfortunately. The best example of that is probably fitness clubs. So I think I saw an article once that said 70% of people that sign up for the gym at the beginning of the year, they quit in July. So and they stop going in February. So the gym got 5 months of dues for nothing, right? But folks, it took them 5 months to actually get up the will or to cancel, which is crazy. That's money that the gym got to keep, unfortunately.
Yeah, that happens a lot with a lot of subscription services, whether it's a gym, magazines, or even like the streaming services.
Yeah.
Join for free. Like you do tend to forget.
Yep, yep. And I mean, that's another reason why to consider these recurring payment models, because, you know, it takes a lot of time as an entrepreneur to run people down to pay you. So to the extent possible, you know, you want to make it where, you know, the error is in favor of the entrepreneur and the business, and not, you know, not the consumer, right? Because, you know, at the end of the day, if you're running people down for checks, that could put you out of business.
Yep.
So just some things to think about. I'd be interested to hear, you know, if you guys ever test any of these things out, you know, using scarcity or the peak end rule or things like that, you know, drop me an email and let me know how it went. You know, this is some of the stuff that I find fascinating. I see, you know, and I see companies large and small do it every day. All right. We are at 7. The panel is going to start around 7:45. I want to take a quick break and then kind of dive into this last section. Does that work for you guys?
Sounds good. Thank you.
That's fine.
Yes, that's fine.
5-minute break, Judge, you said?
Yeah, 5-minute break.
Okay.
All right, everyone, welcome back. This is the last, kind of the last piece of this module 2. And then after this, we're going to jump into our panel. Any questions before we start? All right. And so we've talked a lot about value-based pricing as opposed to cost pricing. And I want you guys to understand that customers are not trying to minimize price, they're trying to maximize benefit, right? There's some value above and beyond the cost of whatever it costs, you know, the entrepreneur to deliver that product that the customer is willing to pay. And the more value that you create, or the more value that you can convince the consumer that you created, the more you can charge. So the best way to put that, right, is, there's an old adage that says if the best way to sell a $2,000 watch is to put it next to a $1,000 watch. Why? Because once you put them next to each other, they're going to see the difference in the quality, the difference in the workmanship, it has to be, you have to change the narrative so you're not just talking about price. So there was a study done by this psychologist named William Poundstone. He did a study with beer. Pretty simple, right? All the beer was equivalent, similar sizes and everything, right? He priced them a little differently. He priced one beer at $180, the other at $250. 20% of the time, people chose the lower priced option, and 80% of the time, consumers chose the higher price option. Keep in mind, the beer was identical, right? He ran another test. He had 3 different options, priced at $160, $180, and $250, all identical, volumes of beer. 80% of the time, customers went with the option in the middle. 20% of the time, customers went with the higher priced option or highest priced option. And 0% of the time, consumers went with the lowest priced option. He did one final test. He made the highest price option a little bit higher. 85% of the time, consumers went with the middle price option. 10% of the time, consumers went with the highest price option, and 5% with the lowest priced option. So at the end of the day, you could always find a reason to charge more. You have to at least be willing to test it. Any thoughts on this study, guys? Shandis, Magali, anyone? I found this stuff pretty fast.
I like to look at a ball.
Yeah, I see. I found it
also-
interesting. Oh, sorry.
You go ahead.
No, okay. Because I remember I use a subscription where you would have like the basic as like like the first choice, and then you have the premium, and then you also have the what do you call it, like the highest subscription. And many a times out of 10 you would go for like the middle one, because the lower one you're just only getting to use a limited amount of stuff, but the middle one you get to use a little bit more, but at the same time you still have to look at what you can afford, so you can't really touch the higher cost, the one that's at the higher price.
Exactly. I think we all go through that. I mean, think about how many times you go into the store, and no matter what you're buying, you buy the absolute lowest cost option. I don't. I almost never buy the lowest cost option. So there's this relationship between price and perception of value that we have to be cognizant of as we set our prices.
And not only that, I think aesthetics goes into play as well. Looking at the model that you currently have up on the screen, some people may say, you want to know what? That mug may just be too much beer for me, and that first option just ain't enough, but the middle one may be just right. Or even if you put at the end of something that is more or less similar, because the other shirt may have like a pink stripe, you may more be prone to be attracted to that one when in essence they're more or less the same. They're supposed, at least they're supposed to be the same price, have the same price point, but because this one has a little pink check and a pink check on it, you will pay more for a pink check than just paying the lower end price and probably being able to add that pink check on yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, you have to convince the consumer why they're getting, why they're paying more. You don't actually have to spend more. You just have to create the narrative on why this is more valuable than the other option. So I totally agree with you. So the other thing that I want you to be cognizant of is think about consumption when setting your prices. So going back to the gym example, because it's pretty easy. Think about two people, Malik and Amina go to the gym to sign up at the beginning of the year. Malik gets an annual payment plan and he pays, $240 right there and then, and he's done for the year as far as payment. Amina decides to pay monthly, right? So she's paying $20 a month and it's all the same, right? It's all $240 either way. Who do you guys think is more likely to work out on a regular basis? And who do you think is more likely to renew at the end of the year?
The 240, I think so, because I don't have to be committed for those remaining 11 months if I'm paying on a monthly basis, especially if there's no cancellation policy in play for monthly payments. So if I already paid upfront in full for something, I'm going to get my money's worth, as opposed to be given an option to pay a portion. I'm going to just use the portion worth.
Interesting. Research says that the annual payment plan is actually worse. I think you're special compared to everybody else. I think I would start off at the gym going long and hard. But pretty much by maybe June, July, I already spent the money. So it's like, all right, cool. If I don't want to get up and go to the gym, no big deal. If you had to think about it as that payment hitting your account every month, every time that payment hit my account, I'd say, you know what? I need to get up and go to the gym. I can't just be spending this money for nothing. And I think that's how a lot of people would look at it. So basically these graphs just show how things kind of trend over the year. So if you were to have a quarterly payment plan, you would see a spike in consumption four times a year, and it would be around whenever the payment was made. If it was semi-annual, you'd see two spikes. If it was monthly, it would be relatively even. I mean, everybody's different, but I think the majority of consumers, they tend to track payment with value. So, it's great to get the money up front, but engagement drives things like renewal, right? So at the end of the year, the person that paid that one monthly fee, they might just never come in and pay you again. Versus the person that's been actually using a gym all month, they're probably going to re-up because you are a part of their routine.
I guess that's why I was broke then. So
you know what's so funny, that the one-time payment, I was always told that 9 out of 10, that's considered a loss to the customer once they pay it up front, automatically, psychologically, and the monthly keeps them paying because it's a monthly payment as a reminder. So they'll constantly renew and pay versus that one time. And I can see why the monthly is better, because it's psychologically reminding you, oh, I got to go to the gym. I got to go to the gym.
Absolutely. So I found that fascinating as well. We are sort of creatures of habit. So if you get into the mode where you're going to the gym all the time, you're going to keep on going. And likewise, every time you part with that money every month, it's a little bit painful.
Well, what if it's like, say a car insurance, say you're like paying it once a year? Would that still be the same effect or no?
It would, no, the product is a little bit different. I mean, car insurance is something that just kind of sits there, car insurance, VIEDA, Like you don't have to engage with it, you know, on a monthly basis or a daily basis. So that's a little bit different. I'm talking about like a product or service that you use frequently. You'd prefer to pay for it, you know, monthly, and actually see the value that you're getting.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
The other thing to keep in mind is repeat sales and word of mouth. The best referral you can get is a happy customer telling you know, someone else about your business. So this is kind of the world that we live in now with Yelp reviews and things like that. So just make sure that, you know, you are, you know, always putting your best foot forward, and any, you know, negative interactions or suboptimal interactions with consumers, you're doing your best to, you know, to mitigate that, and, you know, kind of tracking it on the internet, and making sure that you have a say in the narrative.
I'm seeing here that you have most people won't frequent a restaurant that doesn't have positive reviews. It is very hard to get persons to review, to give their reviews on purchases or items that they've purchased. I could review them to death and they would not send a review. But then I've also heard, on the other hand, no review is a good review.
Yeah, I think there needs to be something out there. I mean, unfortunately, the way that whole review system works, people usually only post things when they're pissed off, right? So it tends to be overly skewed negative, even for, you know, for restaurants, for example, that are rated very high. If you had a really bad experience, you're like, oh no, I'm going online tonight. I'm gonna make sure everybody knows about this. Well, you probably dined at that restaurant 20 times and had a good experience and never took the time to actually write something. So I do think that it's important to, you know, have someone, whether it's a friend, a family member, somebody, put something out there on the internet that's a positive review. If anything, just to balance out the negative ones that they're inevitable. At some point, someone's going to have a bad experience, or, you know, a bad interaction, and they're going to write about it. All right. Also take into consideration when you're going to bill for your services. Some businesses demand payment when the product is consumed. Some demand payment far in advance of consumption. Some businesses allow customers to pay after after it's been purchased. You know, that's for things like appliances, you know, really big, costly items like that. Just things to take into account as you plan for how folks are actually going to pay you. You might want to take the hurt off by allowing flexible payment terms. All right.
Flexible.
Now I have a few tips for, you know, for you guys. Every time I go out, or I leave my house, I'm always taking a look to see how entrepreneurs are doing things. So I have just a kind of a broad stroke recommendations. And here's a few of them. With some of them we've touched on already, but this is kind of a nice concise list. So the first one is use charm prices. You know, end your price in $9, $99, or $95. Psychology shows that consumers spend more, right? So just take it for what it is and use them. If you are a high-end place, don't use cents in your prices. So instead of $29.99, just go with 29. There's other ways to make that out. Don't use dollar signs. You want to disassociate money and the good being received, especially if you're a high-end product. There's another trick called bundling. So basically you say, hey, you buy 10 of these for only $10. So you're making the customer think that they have to buy 10 when they don't necessarily have to. You know, each one of those items could have been $1 regularly, but all of a sudden you just move 10 of them because the customer thinks that they have to buy 10. Per customer limits, I've seen some instances where that could be implemented. And that's going back to the illusion of scarcity that we talked about before. Free promotions, buy one, get one, free shipping, whatever it is. That's the way to go. I'm surprised I don't see more folks doing that. As we mentioned, it's a volume business, so you have to move more units. Don't make consumers do math. That's another thing that I've seen. 50% off. It's just better to say buy one get one free. Customers tend to like that more. The math turns a lot of people off. You know, I have to figure out what 50% is of this one good. Use simple prices, right? If you're going to be marking things down, you want to use simple prices. It's easier to do the math on marking something down from $100 if you're going to mark it off 30% than to start at $95 and have to mark it down 30%. So just use simple prices. Create artificial time constraints. We talked about this a couple times, you know, 1 day sale, you know, manufacture scarcity however you can. Be cognizant of the time of day. Bargain hunters are, you know, they deb out during the middle of the day. So nobody says that you have to charge the same price during the day as you charge at night. So just keep that in mind as you price your wares. Visually highlight price differences. You know, you want to show folks the deal that they're getting, you know, how much of a break you're cutting them. Don't be shy about it. Too many options. So optimally, ideally, you want to have 3 options for whatever. You know, if you're selling t-shirts, have 3 t-shirts that are sort of alike and let the customer choose which one they want, right? Too many options leads to folks not making a decision. Not enough options makes them want to price shop more. So after, the research has shown that 3 is the right number. Number 13, we talked about a little bit before. If you're going to increase price, keep the increases to 10% at a time. Over that, you know, folks tend to not react so well to it. And then the last one, number 14, you know, shorter is better, right? So customers get, you know, scared off by really long numbers, right? So $14.99.99 is kind of scary. It's better to go with $14.99, and it's even better to drop the $sign. Fair enough. And I have a few more. So remember the $25 t-shirt. I'm saying this again and again. You know, how much money are you getting to put in your pocket at the end of the day? You always have to think about that. Provide 3 choices. I'm going to say that again: good, better, and best. You know, obviously no one's here selling junk, right? So there's a good option, there's a better option, and there's the best option. Make your prices as simple as possible. Use the herd effect, right? Don't be afraid to tell customers which is the most popular plan or popular shirt or what everybody's buying, right? Like folks, you know, we tend to want to be like everybody else as much as we want to be individuals. Continuously promote the value of your product or service, not the cost. Make the most expensive option obnoxiously expensive, right? It's called decoy pricing. You don't want them to actually buy that, right? But you're trying to do that to show them that the middle price option is a good option. End your prices with 9. And if you're selling online and you're listing benefits, don't list more than 7 benefits. Our mind can only store about 7 things in our short-term memory at once. So I got a few examples, and I want you guys to kind of point out what you see here. So this is some of the stuff we talked about. You got 3 choices. On the right, you know, you're selling bottles of wine. The decoy price is $50. No one is really going to buy that. You probably only have to have one of those in store. You got to get a lot of the $30 option because that's where you're pushing folks to buy that product. And the pricing is simple. Here's another example from Apple. You notice everything that Apple sells, it ends in a 9. It's simple, $9.99, $10.99, right? Before trade-in. And if you look around the page, they only list a handful of benefits. The iPhone has a ton of benefits, but they keep it simple. They're not trying to inundate you with information. Here's an example from Best Buy. Just, you know, I'm going to blow this up a little bit, but you can see what I'm talking about. Ends in 9, you know, simple pricing, and then anchoring. They're showing you the deal of the day, what that is marked down from. That's intentional. You're seeing, hey, I'm getting $50 worth of value in this product. And look at all their prices, $429, $799, $99, so on and so forth. And there's a reason why folks are doing this. Here's another example. Again, everything ends in a 9. The benefits are not more than 7. I'm sure there's a ton of benefits to these products that they could, they could tell you about. This was from Spotify. I should have mentioned that. But just do the same thing that everyone else is doing. Use the psychology of pricing to your benefit. Got one more example from Samsung. If you notice, I'm like a broken clock right now. Ends in 9, simple pricing, and anchor the customer on the deal that you're giving them. So $699.99, you cross that out and put $299.99. Show them the value that they're getting. Some general tips. Once again, remember how much money you're putting into your pocket at the end of the day. Set prices that capture value. Sell higher price goods or higher margin goods. COGS, your cost of goods sold should be no more than, actually it should be 35%. That's a typo, of whatever the product is. Some stores that I visited, I would really question whether they need a brick and mortar store. And I think Kusa talked about this a little bit before, or maybe she did when we were on the radio. Retail is expensive, right? Having to pay rent, having to pay WAPA, and dealing with all of those things, they add up. And at the end of the day, you have to make sure that you're bringing in enough sales to justify that location. Another general tip is don't pay employees minimum wage. It's bad for morale. And at the end of the day, you ultimately get what you pay for, and you pay for what you get. Shipping is kind of one of those things in the VI that we don't think about, but it really eats into margins. So you want to make sure that you're planning ahead and using services like VI Cargo and Paradise Freight as much as possible. Getting things shipped in via USPS is expensive. Another general tip is to consider starting an S corporation to minimize taxation. One of the panelists is her name is Key Walker. She can help you with that discussion, or speak to your lawyer. But that's one of the things that I would consider taking a look at. You definitely want to minimize double taxation if you can. Reduce inventory. Inventory is dead cash, right? You can't do anything else with that money. So if you are carrying $10,000 worth of inventory, please try to see ways that you can get that down to 5 and still meet your needs. That's $5,000 that you can use to do other things. Sign up for QuickBooks. Accounting and bookkeeping is tedious, and QuickBooks is very good at helping us or helping minimize the pain. If you don't have an accountant or a bookkeeper, like a lot of small businesses, use QuickBooks and have their software help you with that. I also recommend creating a budget. It helps to be able to predict financial outcomes. Cash flow is the #1 reason why businesses go out of business. So if you can predict where your finances are going to be before you run out of cash, you're going to be in a better place. I see a lot of folks doing marketing on their own. And I will say that I know it's cheaper, but marketing is something, when done right, it pays for itself. So professionals are better than moonlighters, or is better than your friend or your family that is going to take a hold of your social media pages and do it whenever they get a chance, right? So if you leave it to the professionals, I think you should be able to justify the return on whatever investment you're making. The last general business tip is actively solicit consumer feedback. It's much more expensive to sell products that consumers don't want. Any thoughts on these tips?
What local marketing companies can you recommend?
There are a few. I don't want to just email me. I will shoot you a list of about 5 of them. But there are folks that will run your social media pages and things like that for you.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, I have a question. What is your thought about acquiring business insurance?
Well, I mean, as with any insurance, you have to, think about the frequency, likelihood, and severity of any potential claim, right? So how likely is it that you are going to have that claim? how frequent is that claim going to happen, or potential claim, and what's the severity, right? If it's something that could put you out of business after happening once, you probably should have it, right? If it's something that's going to be more of a nuisance, you know, you might be able to get away with it. So you just got to think about those three things, right? How much is it going to happen? How likely is it to happen? And how severe is it going to be when it happens?
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right. So we talked about this a little bit in the strategy class, but I wanted to just kind of really, you know, give you guys a quick overview. Your profit is decided in large part by the industry that you chose to join. So on average, you know, landscaping companies are going to have similar profit margins. On average, you know, retail stores are going to have similar profit margins. So just really quickly, remember the relationship between price and profit margin. You know, you start with your revenue, you subtract off your business expenses, and you're left with profit, right? So your profit over your revenue is your profit margin percent. So here's a study that's put together every year by NYU, and this shows you the profit, the average profit in various industries, right? So you can see banks, for every $100 that banks pull in, they're able to put about 31 bucks in the bank after they paid their bills. That's not the same for an auto parts store. Auto parts stores, you know, for every $100 they bring in, they only get to put $3 away as profit. Supermarket, same thing, right? So roughly $1.50 for every $100 in sales that a supermarket makes. It varies like widely by industry. Here are some companies that you may be familiar with. This is all information from their financial reports. Google is very profitable. About $25 for every $100 that they bring in goes straight to the bank. Apple, likewise, is very profitable. But as you move down, you can see some of the businesses that we know and we use a lot aren't as profitable. Right? American Airlines puts about $3.68 in the bank for every $100 in sales. Kroger, same thing, right? About $3 for every $100 in sale. And you can tell the folks at the top of this use value pricing. The folks at the bottom of this, based on their industry, can only use cost plus pricing. So supermarkets are typically just marking up, you know, whatever good they bought from someone else, and that's all they can afford to charge. Because you know what? I don't care where I get my Frosted Flakes from. It could be Plaza East, it could be Plaza West, it could be Food Town. As long as I get those, you know, as long as I get those Frosted Flakes, it's all the same to me. So you definitely want to be on the value pricing side and not on the cost plus pricing side of the equation. Any questions? All right, just wrapping up here. We probably got about like 15 more slides. So I had a quick workshop. You know, you guys, I know you guys are tired. It's been a long night. But you know, this example is really to just talk about, you know, how would you go about putting all the things that we talked about tonight into practice, right? So let's imagine that you're a dentist office and you have this new electronic toothbrush that you want to sell to your clients. You know, talk about two different pricing strategies that you would use to sell. So, you know, I'll run through this quickly for you guys. The first one I would think about is skim pricing. I would try to start the price of this out high and gradually reduce it over time. Another thing that I would try to think about is competitor-based pricing, where I went out into the marketplace and saw, you know, who else was offering, you know, electronic toothbrushes on island, and kind of try to figure out where where this toothbrush fit in the marketplace. So those are some examples, but there are a couple different, pricing strategies that you could have used. I think I think that I really need to talk about greed. We talked a lot about raising price, but I think that it's important for us to, at the same time, be responsible business owners and responsible humans. You know, I am not saying go out there and rip people off. I am saying, you need to get paid for the value that you're creating. And if you're not creating value, you can't charge for that price. You can't charge that price to the consumer. So here's a quick example of a senator. This happened on the floor of Congress. She was talking to a pharmaceutical CEO, and I'm going to try to get this video to play really quick. It did not play, damn it. Long story short is this was a pharmaceutical CEO that was charging $763 for one single pill. And they found out that the CEO's salary was tied to was tied to revenue. So the more of these pills that he can sell at a ridiculous price, the more his personal salary went up, and he got dragged down to Congress to explain it to everybody. So definitely don't want to be greedy. Please make sure that you're creating value and getting paid for that value. Do not, charge someone $10,000 for a t-shirt and think that that's going to fly. Any questions? Cool, so you still there?
Good information.
I am still here.
All right, so last few slides. Just remember.
You're not playing the video?
I tried to, and for some reason I could not get it to work.
Okay.
Yeah, could not get it to work. I will try to pull it up a little bit later. So just wrapping up real quick, just remember that if you were able to increase your price by 1% and keep everything else the same, sell the same amount of units, your profit would go up by 11%.
Quick question though. So you said increase it by 1%. Is that annually or?
No, just one unit. So if you're selling something for $100, if you moved it up to $101, you would increase your profit by 11%.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
So in the case of the t-shirt, the $25 t-shirt, you remember at the end of the day, you only got to take 95 cents off of that $25 t-shirt.
Yes.
If you raise the price by 10%, by 1%, another quarter, that'd be another quarter that fell straight to the bottom line.
Got it. Thank you.
So just some food for thought. Don't be afraid to test pricing. Remember the 4 Ps, product, place, promotion, and pricing. Remember that customers aren't seeking to minimize price. They're trying to maximize benefit. Remember all the different things that we talked about with respect to the psychology of pricing. Test. There's no reason why price has to be static, right? Please test as many of these pricing strategies that we've talked about. Scarcity creates value. Please remember that if your product is free, you are the product. Greed, don't be greedy. And then not everyone is your customer. All right. If you don't remember anything else, dare to be different. There's always a good reason to increase price, and scarcity creates value. So that is my last. That is my last slide. I always like to include some quotes, some motivation. This stuff is hard, everyone. Being an entrepreneur is very hard. So stay positive and keep up the hard work. If you guys have any questions, we got a little bit of time before the panel starts. But if not, we can take a short break.
I have a question. This is Cheryl. Do you have any recommendation for any type of local agency that can provide for a customer base feasible studies in any area?
It depends on what industry. I know some folks that do feasibility studies like on the business side, and if you email me, I can send you some links. But it all depends on what industry you're talking about.
Okay, I'll email you.
And my email will be on the last page of the slide deck.
Okay, appreciate that.
I have a question. This is Katisha. So I kind of did the opposite. It was not intentional of what you said on the apparel forum. So my prices didn't have any cents on them. So since the last webinar, I was in the process of updating my website. So I did that this week and made some changes to the prices. And they now end with cents, 99 or 95.
Okay.
So to your comment, where you said if you're trying to be more, not necessarily on the high end, but I guess improve your value or appearance of your value, to not necessarily use cents. Now, how do I, because now I'm like, well, do I take off the cents now? And if I do, what is a recommended strategy for doing that?
I would say just take it off. You know, remember I said test everything. So you could say, hey, I was just testing some different pricing strategies. And, you know, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone will bemoan you. If you are trying to be a high-end brand, I don't think that cents will work for you. Or it's not congruent with the brand that you're trying to create. So just take them off.
Yeah, I would say yes, I am testing with all these changes. But all right, thank you.
No problem.
I also have a question to Shandis. How often do you do, well, how long do you do the testing of the prices? And then also, what do you look for when doing it?
I mean, obviously at the end of the day, you want to see sales, right? So, you know, you should be monitoring your sales on a daily basis. So, you know, just look at, you know, I'm sure that you're putting some money into marketing. So keep your marketing spend constant and look at and see how many people are buying your product on this day versus that day. Like you'll know when you hit a winner.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Any questions? All right. Well, we'll take a short break. I think most of the panel is on. I think we're still waiting for a couple people. So let's give them a few. We will start back up at 7:50. And I appreciate everyone sticking with us tonight. I know everybody probably worked today, so it's a long day, but I appreciate you guys being as engaging as you are. So let's take a short break and we'll start back up at 7:50.
Sounds good.
All right. Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome back. We are just waiting on one last panelist that's having some technical issues, so just give us a second. We will be starting shortly. While we're waiting, I want to thank everyone that's here. Please welcome Commissioner Richard Evangelista, Will Royale Jr., and Key Walker to the forum. You guys feel free to say hi. Feel free to say good evening.
Yeah, good evening, good night. Thanks for having us, Jed.
No problem. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening. Hi, everyone. This is Key Walker. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you guys so much for being a part of the panel. Will, it's very nice to see you.
All right. Who was that was just speaking?
That was Kusa.
Oh, hi, Kusa. Nice to see
Hi.
you. There you are. Hey.
Long time no see.
Yeah. Awesome.
Miss Walker, how have you been?
I'm good. Hi, Lisa. How's everything?
Everything is doing well. How is business?
Busy.
Busy. I could imagine. You take on all these tough cases, so I'm sure you're always busy.
Just a little bit. Not as busy as Jed, though.
You're too kind.
I don't think.
All right. Well, while we're waiting on Keisha, maybe we can.
I'll reach out to her and see if I could help her in any way.
Okay. Oh, great. We can wait for Keisha so I can get ready. Good evening.
How are you doing, Commissioner Evangelista?
At 8 o'clock. Good evening, everyone. The plane's leaving early tonight?
Hey, everybody's ready to go.
All right. I'm going to get dressed. Tell me when you're ready.
No. While we're waiting for Keisha, can you guys just give yourself a quick introduction to the panel? I'm sorry, to the group. Let everyone know a little bit more about yourself and what you do. Ricky first.
Ricky first. Oh my goodness! Look, I'm not even dressed. I'm gonna go get dressed. Good evening, everyone. Richard Evangelista, currently Commissioner of DLCA, and I'm just the person who right now tries to protect the consumers from any predatory practice by the businesses, but I also protect the businesses because I ensure that they do the right thing. So in this instance, I'm going to help you and share with you what I do to assist you as a entrepreneur or as a potential business person in a community. Good evening, and thank you very much, Mr. JohnHope.
Thank you. Will?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me, Jed. I'm Will Royal. I'm a founder of Royal Media Worldwide, which provides marketing and software development services to a few different companies. We also have Promotix, which is our latest startup and is a member of the RT Park here on St. Croix.
Thank you, Will. Thanks for joining. Attorney Walker.
Good evening. I'm Attorney Walker. I had a practice here in the Virgin Islands for more than a decade now. And I believe I am here probably to discuss pricing services. I noticed you have some retail here and it's a little different than pricing services. So I'm looking forward to sharing my experience and the knowledge that I've gained over the years as to how to price yourself.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, we're gonna jump right in. We're gonna talk some pricing, but we're also just gonna talk about your experience as entrepreneurs and commissioners and things like that. Ricky, we just finished up a discussion on greed. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and just how you've seen some entrepreneurs kind of get on the wrong side of DLCA by pricing their goods or services too aggressively?
Sure. Good evening. Let me say, oh my goodness, I didn't clean up my room. You guys got me off guard. So first of all, for persons who are entering into the business of earning money in the Virgin Islands. I want to say congratulations for those of you who are listening. It seems like there's maybe about 12 of you on the line, and I want to let you know that I'm glad you're hanging in. I actually signed on earlier when this started, and I want to congratulate both the EDA as well as Mr. JohnHope on what he's doing. This is something that we need to do. We need to continuously educate our people to ensure that we actually can accomplish what we put out to do. So as it relates to licensing is part of the process. As an entrepreneur, you need to know that in order to do it properly so that you can actually get contracts, if you're trying to get contracts to sell your items or to get customers to walk into a legitimate business, you need to, of course, form your business, and whatever you form, unless you're a sole proprietorship, meaning you're operating as yourself, whatever formation type of business you have, you need to file that with the Lieutenant Governor's office. And please make sure, if you're not using your name, that you register your trade name, because it would be rather unfortunate that you engaged in a business and you utilize a trade name that is not registered, and someone comes along like Attorney Walker and files a lawsuit for you to actually prohibit you from using that name. As far as pricing, at DLCA, contrary to what some persons believe, DLCA actually has the power and the authority to control price on certain consumer goods. You may have noticed in the past week that I have actually entered an order non-pro-tunc for the fuel stations, and they're starting to kick back. I'm here to publicly say, so some of you who have gas station owner friends can go let them know that Supreme Court case ruled in Puerto Rico as well as Hawaii that states do have the power to control prices. Now, we don't control it so that you lose business, but we can figure out what is your best gross profit margin that will allow you to remain in business. So Jed is talking about pricing. We will not go, obviously, and price simple items that you're selling. It's things that are commodities that are important to the marketplace, such as fuel, certain foods. But the time that we can really control everything is after a state of emergency. Currently, as of March 13, 2020, there is a state of emergency for items that will help us limit the spread and or prevent the growth of COVID-19. So other than that, by and large, in terms of setting your price, we're not going to tell you how to set your price unless it's absolutely exorbitant and it's affecting the daily lives of persons. If it's a luxury item, we're not going to get involved, but it's just for daily products. Some people say, well, then why aren't you controlling the price of food? There's a science to that, and I'm actually going to have a DLCA monthly virtual talk show where I'm going to speak about that, so I don't take up all the time because I'm very introverted, and I don't want Mr. Jed JohnHope to think I'm extroverted and I like to speak. So I'll turn it back over to my panelists. Thank you, Mr. Jed JohnHope.
If you find yourself on the wrong side of licensing, though, come see me.
Let's do that.
Well, on that note, Keisha just joined the call. Dr. Keisha Christian, do you want to give a quick introduction to the group?
Yes, hi. My name is Dr. Keisha Christian. I'm the owner of Neighborhood Pharmacy. I opened Neighborhood Pharmacy in 2015 after graduating from the University of Georgia in 2004. I worked at Target Pharmacy, and then I moved here to St. Croix back in 2011, and then decided that I wanted to do something for myself. So in 2015, Neighborhood Pharmacy was created, and now we're here.
Thank you. Thanks for joining. So since you just walked in, I got a question for you. Let's go ahead and engage one time. So at the pharmacy, how often do you change prices, test new prices, test new pricing schemes? How do you think about it?
On a weekly basis, we do, because we're always getting in recommended items, or if a patient comes in and it's something that we don't have and we special order for them, or we think it's something that will sell, we order it. And then every week I have a team member that does comp shopping. So they'll go to different locations here on island, look with 2 or 3 products, see what the prices are there, and then see if we're comparable to the other stores.
Very cool. Very cool. Will, haven't heard from you tonight. You sell services to corporations large and small. How do you price those services?
It depends. It differs. Some of the government facilities, we have contracts where we sell things at a percentage. For consumer items, normally what I do, because we have a lot of people that buy stuff from like Amazon or Walmart or other stores, I will look at Amazon or Walmart's price and see how close I can get to that. And that helps us. So by the time they calculate in the shipping for the price of the item, it's cheaper to get it from us than to order it and have it here.
Okay. Okay. How do you think about inventory? Like, how do you meticulously track like what your inventory cost you? And
yes, so how we track or how we, so I have for prescriptions and OTCs is different. So they get a set amount that they can use that month based on what the amount of profit we made the month before.
Okay.
Is how that's calculated.
Okay, but the key thing there, I think, is that you are tracking this and you're figuring
Yes.
out monthly what your costs are.
Correct.
Okay.
JohnHope, may I jump in here? Because I think this is important. Dr. Christian is talking about how she maintains her prices. One of the things I have to share with the entrepreneurs on this line is, since I came into office, I've been doing a market basket survey. I've also been doing a fuel survey. And what I'm here to share with all the budding entrepreneurs here, as well as the people who are in businesses, I realized that we, meaning United States Virgin Islanders, are very groupy, for lack of better words. I advertise where you can find the cheapest fuel on each island. I advertise where you can buy the cheapest staple items on each island. Perfect example, today there's a certain business, unleaded regular fuel is $2.65 a gallon. That station was empty when I drove by, yet at another station, it's $3.49. And here I am thinking, I'm telling the community, this is your cheapest price. So as far as pricing, it's not necessarily in this community, you have the most affordable price. It's who I like and who I don't like, I gonna support. So one of the things I must say with Neighborhood Pharmacy, since the entrepreneur is here with Dr. Christian, is we like her, so she's successful. But she could have had the best price, but if we don't like her, she gonna fail. And so I'm here to tell you as entrepreneurs, when you set your price, also be cognizant of who your network consists of, because that goes a long way. We're still a small community and we tend to support who we like, not necessarily who has the best price. So don't bite your hand to feed. You don't want to spite yourself by lowering your price. If you can maximize your margin, go ahead and do it. Test the market.
I agree with that. They also service, and what service you offer is another thing that they will come to you for.
Can you give an example of that?
For example, because we do delivery, we'll have people that will, and the delivery is free. So our products, they would prefer to pay a higher price if something was priced higher because of that free delivery service. It's about convenience and making something convenient for the person.
Oh yes, I mean you're adding more value, so you should be able to charge more, and that's something we talked a lot about in today's class was just pricing on the value end of things versus pricing on a cost plus basis. So thanks for hammering that home. Will, you've been pretty quiet tonight. Jump in here. You've worked with Fortune 500s. You've worked with a ton of small companies as well. How do you price services for that wide of an audience?
Yeah, well, I've had a few different companies over the years, right? And some of them have been service-based, like the ad agency, and we would have an hourly rate card, much like an attorney or law firm, and price based off of a retainer for marketing services. And sometimes it would be project-based, and if it was project-based, we would have to estimate how much time and services it would take compare that to our rate card, and then we'd always have to build in a buffer for ourselves because we knew that sometimes we would underestimate things. And so the benefit there for the customer or the client was that, you know, it was a fixed fee, project based. They knew exactly what they were going to pay, no more, not a penny more to get the job done. And for us was that if we could build in some extra margin there and accomplish the project without any hiccups, if we did a great job on the front end estimating, you know, we could build in higher margins that way. So that was the agency business. I have a music festival in Arkansas today still. We didn't get to hold one in 2020 because of coronavirus. But you know, we are hopeful in the fall of this coming year that we'll have that event with COVID safety features. But the last year we did it in 2019, we had increased the price of the ticket by about $20 more, which the ticket is normally $230 or so ticket. So $20 is less than 10%. However, we saw a very large decrease in attendance actually. And when we kind of questioned and figured out why, it was due to price. And so having this event only once a year, it's very hard to test price on it, but it showed us how important dialing in the right price for that event was to us. I mean, just a few dollars more, you know, 8% or so more was enough to break the camel's back and lower the demand for the event. So needless to say, this year the price has gone back down to what it was the year before. The ticketing software that we have, that, you know, our latest startup, we have probably revamped our pricing structure, I don't know, 10 times, you know, in 2 years time. We've gone from monthly to annual and biannual plans. We've had several different packages, a la carte stuff. We've been experimenting with the software as to the best way to price it. We've been testing everything we can to see, you know, what not only turns the best margins for our business, but also the highest conversions for customers to, you know, end up using the software.
Very, very cool. I mean, so yeah, you seem like you're tracking a lot of data, and you know what's working well and what's not, and when it's not working well, you pivot quickly or in time to figure something else out.
Yeah, I think tracking is what you said there is critically important. I think in the agency business, I sold that before moving down here to the USVI, but back then really we started at a certain rate, and as we got better clients, we increased the rates, and we kind of grandfathered in our older clients at the lower prices because we knew that if we had raised prices, we would lose them, and we didn't want to just lose revenue. We just chose that any new revenue we would add would be at a higher hourly rate, and we kept increasing that way. But now, yeah, we are tracking so much data in regards to, you know, conversion rates and where they're falling off in the conversion funnel, you know, and based around pricing, and even something like the festival, you know, we're polling our attendees as to what the proper price points should be. You know, where there was I recently read a book. It's really geared towards software companies, but it's called Product-Led Growth. And he talks about a survey that's in there. And if I might get this wrong, but there's 4 questions really that you would want to ask. And that would be, you know, at what point would our product be just too expensive that you would never buy it? At what point would you consider purchasing our product, but have to think about it? At what point do you think it would be a good value? And at what point do you think it would be considered cheap? And if you can kind of gauge on that 4-question scale and poll a large audience, you can really dial in the right spot. You want to really be at that 3rd level where people are considering to pay that that premium price for your product, but don't think it's too expensive yet, right? And then you can always run deals at that price point where they think it's a good deal. You never want to be in the cheap zone because you're missing out on margin at that point.
Fair enough, fair enough. Attorney Walker,
Yes, sir.
tell us about a time you underpriced a project.
I can't recall specifically underpricing a project because I do very little flat fee work.
Mhm.
However, I can talk about underpricing myself.
Okay.
So in the legal field, you have hourly billing rates. You can have a flat fee rate, and then there's contingency fee if you do certain type of plaintiff's work. And I think maybe Keisha can speak to this as well, Dr. Christian. You go to school and you learn your trade, you learn your practice, you learn the law, or you learn pharmacy, but you actually don't learn anything about business. So a lot of it is trial and error. And if you have friends like Dr. Christian who make you read books, you learn things from reading books, right? So what initially happened when I started my practice is I underpriced myself for a very long time. And I didn't realize until years later that I was severely underpricing myself. And a lot of it has to do with just having faith in the industry, how you value yourself, having the right people around you. I hired a business coach. And then when I started talking to people, I made the decision to price higher. And I was told by my coach that, believe me, they'll pay for it. And they always do. So for the few years where I was underpricing myself, I lost so much revenue because I could have priced at a higher rate, which was more aligned with the value that I provide. So I think that especially if you're going into the services industry, do your research ahead of time and don't sell yourself short. There was a time where I gave free consultations thinking that, no one's going to pay just to talk to me to decide if they want to hire me. And my coach was like, are you crazy? How long have you been doing this? So I started charging for my consultations. And I would say at least 99.9% of everyone who calls for a consultation agrees to pay for it. And they pay for it before they even talk to me. So I wish I had done that research in the beginning. I wish I'd hired a coach in the beginning. So learning from my mistakes, I would recommend to all who's listening is to just really talk to people that are already in the industry. Definitely look into coaching services. I think with social media now, there's so many groups for everyone's industry that you can kind of get feedback and ask questions in those groups as well. And get all the information that you can get before you start setting your prices.
That's a great point. I was going to give you a hard time about that. And I don't have a business coach, but I do have mentors and advisors. And I think it's important as entrepreneurs that we have people that we can bounce ideas off of, and in a non-threatening kind of a collegial environment. So yes, you have taken it one step further, and you have a coach. How often do you meet with your coach?
Every week.
Wow.
We meet every week for 15 minutes, and we meet every month for an hour, and then we do 4 or 5 retreats a year. And I pay my coach basically $1 gazillion a year, so she can, help me make more money. So, but it's definitely worth it. It's definitely an investment. And I think you just pay the right time. You choose the right time in your business to make that investment. But outside of paying money to a coach, I have great mentors. I'm blessed to have great mentors in the legal field. And it was really one of my mentors who said, you're kicking butt. You need to charge more money. This is how much I charge. And then I was blown away by how much she charged. So that's when I started to value my services more and up my price.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this time and time again with entrepreneurs. I mean, we tend to undervalue ourselves and the services we provide, and even the products we provide. We're always trying to cut people a deal, and at the end of the day, this person has a $1,500 phone in their hand. They can pay $5 more for a T-shirt.
Of course, and you get what you pay for. And I'll say this, and I've heard other people say this in the services industry all the time. you know, people will pay the price that you set. And those are often your best clients. You rarely hear from them. They trust you to get the work done. When you undervalue yourself and offer the discount or even offer your services for free, those are the difficult business relationships you end up having. Those are the people who will, you know, pepper you with questions, call you incessantly, complain about every single thing. So it's, you know, that 9 times out of 10, that's what happens. And I think, you know, in addition to really setting your value and pricing yourself, I think you also need to pick and choose who you take on or who you provide services for. And I saw that point, and I think towards the end of your presentation, Jed, and it's a very good point. Not every dollar is a good dollar. So you want to pick and choose who you form these client relationships with as well.
Thanks for driving that home.
If I could say something, just to piggyback on Key's mentorship point, your mentor, you can, for me, I have mentors in like different segments. Like when I first started, I knew nothing about bookkeeping. So one of my mentors was somebody that had a finance background that I can ask questions to. So it doesn't always have to be someone in your area, and you can outgrow your mentor and have to find somebody else. So don't think like your mentor from day 1 will be your mentor at day 20.
Thanks, Keisha. That's a great point. Will, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, I mentioned earlier in my ad agency days how we would consistently increase price. You know, the next client that came in the door, we would slightly increase the hourly rate card, et cetera. And that's how we increased our pricing. We would grandfather in our older accounts. But what we also did was every year we would cut the bottom 15 to 20% of our customers. We would actually fire them. So, you know, we didn't have enough, you know, capacity in the agency at one point when the hourly rates continue to climb year after year to service the hourly rates that were set 7 or 8 years ago. You know, it's just all of a sudden the business doesn't really support providing service at that rate. It's not profitable any longer for us. And so, you know, we would give those clients an opportunity to step up, but more times than not, we would cut out the bottom part of our revenue. So when you talk about a dollar not always being a good dollar to have, sometimes we would cut that. We would make that choice and fire our clients, which sounds strange, but that's what we would do.
Yeah, that's an interesting strategy. I mean, I can understand fully why you do it. I just imagine those conversations being kind of tough. Did you refer them to someone else?
Yeah, like I said, we would let them know that our price point, you know, is here now, and give them the opportunity to continue working with us. So it wasn't like we're just saying you're fired, right? But you know, if they weren't able to pay that, then usually they would make the choice in the end. But in our heads, we knew that, you know, we don't have to raise the rates on them, but we know if we do, they're going to leave. So it's essentially we're letting them go, right?
Very cool. So Dr. Christian, I think you have an interesting perspective on this. A lot of folks on the call sell services. You are actually, you know, B2C, dealing with consumers every day. So how do those conversations go? Where someone comes in and they're, you know, complaining about the price. How do those conversations go? You're on mute.
We actually don't have a lot of those conversations. I feel because our prices are competitive, and if they do, I take it into consideration and I check the price for them to see, because there are some things that have been priced mistakenly, just computer error or human error. And most of the things that we've gotten complaints about actually is like a computer, because our software can calculate whatever we put in as the prices. So in those cases, we correct the pricing, but we don't get a lot of those.
Okay.
Mr. JohnHope, if I may, since we have persons on the line listening about pricing. So Dr. Christian, this is not a test question. I just want to make sure you get it right because I just fielded a complaint from someone who bought hair and was charged a different price than what was posted on the shelf. What do you do in the instance in which the advertised price is a lot less than the price on your computer point of sale system?
We match the price that the ticket says.
So whatever's on the shelf.
Correct.
Thank you. So you're following the proper law. And for everyone who's listening, and that's why it's important that you as an owner, as well as your employees who should feel like they own the business also, it's important to pay attention to detail, because in fact, there are many entities who operate within the Virgin Islands who for so long have, when people don't pay attention, there's one price on the shelf, they get to the register, they're not paying attention to what is being charged by the scanner. Please pay attention to the screen, because you can get gypped, and sometimes it's intentional, many times it's unintentional, but the law is they have to honor the price that's posted, not what is in the point of sale system.
We have to have the same item in that. It cannot just be that one.
Correct. No, the price that is posted on the shelf, it's not that the item is on the wrong part of the shelf. Whatever the price is on the shelf, if it's for that particular item,
Correct.
but it comes up greater in the point of sale, because I've had people call me and said, well, the X product was on the price for something that's 99 cents, but it really costs $12. No, that they don't work that way. It has to be at the right part on the shelf. It's just that somebody forgot to change the price on the shelf, and that's what needs to be honored, the lower price.
Thank you for keeping us on the right side of the law, Commissioner.
Hey, all we have is our integrity, and I know you all as entrepreneurs, that's all it's about. Don't lose it, don't sell it. It's costly, it's priceless. No price on your integrity.
All right.
Jed, we do have a question in the chat.
Sure.
Someone asked, what was the deciding factor for you to acknowledge that you needed a coach or a mentor?
I'll let Keisha and Key go, and then I'll jump in. Will, if you have any thoughts, and even Commissioner Evangelista, I'm sure you have coaches and advisors and mentors. I'll let you guys opine, and then I'll wrap it up at the end.
I think a follow-up question should also be, how do you find the right one?
Okay. Anybody want to jump in first?
I can go. I always had a mentor. Even before I had my own practice, I always had, kind of legal mentors. When it just came to a point in my business where I felt that I was working too much and not making as much money as I would have liked. So once I came to that conclusion, I just kind of did some research, and my actual business coach I found through social media groups. I'm in about 8 or 10 different lawyer groups on Facebook, and it's people who all own their own businesses, mainly female. And, they were asking questions about business coaches, and one name kept popping up. So I attended a retreat. I didn't join her program, but I attended a retreat. And it was phenomenal. So I signed up after that. There are different types of business coaches, and it really comes down to what you're looking for. So the coach that I have doesn't even practice law anymore. She just has a law firm, and she treats the law firm as a business, and she has all these other attorneys working for her, and she's basically the CEO. So if you want to get to that point in your career, then you would definitely hire a coach who's done that. And I know myself, and people who know me, I need regular follow-up. Like, I need an accountability partner, because I will just keep working and not pay attention to the business. So the fact that the program was set up in a way that I had to check in every week and scratch off my to-do list, all the things I needed to do to build my business, was very important to me. So all that worked for me. And the fact that I have to pay her every month is further incentivizes me to follow the plan. And after the first year, I saw huge returns So I decided to re-up for next year because it was a successful mentorship relationship, in my opinion.
Very cool.
I would say I've not had a business coach, but I have had several mentors over the years in the different businesses and industries that I've been in. And if I go all the way back to the very first one, when I graduated college and I started the ad agency, I had the ad agency for 15 years, but in the first 6 months or so, I reached out to the large agencies that were in the Orlando, Florida. They were my competitors. But at the time when I was just getting started, they didn't really see me as a threat at that point, right? I was this young guy out of college and just getting my agency going. And I think they were more flattered that, I asked to take them to lunch, and, I just wanted to pick their brain. And maybe they thought one day they might hire me as another person in their agency or something. But they were very open to talk about the business, and I think just flattered that I asked them to go to lunch, and so I did that with a few of my competitors, and then a decade later, we would end up competing for the same business. And so I'm not sure if they were excited that they helped me in the very early days, but nonetheless, they did. And that's happened again, when I got into the software business, I found someone again that has exactly what you said earlier, has done what I want to do. And that's the person I asked to lunch and build a relationship with, because you're going to learn so much from them, and they will be flattered, and they'll be willing to help most of the time.
Thanks, Will. Keisha, any thoughts?
I met my mentor on a social media independent pharmacy minority group. I actually had a question at that time. Frederiksted Health Center had approached me about a 340B program, and I knew nothing about it. So I posed a question on there, and she walked me through every single step. And then I went to a conference in North Carolina. We went to dinner, we hit it off. Her pharmacy actually has a bunch of like clinical stuff that I wanted to incorporate into our pharmacy. And she was very helpful, like text, call. It was just, I felt like when we went to dinner, like we had been friends for a long time. So that's how that started.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there. There's some familiarity that you need with this person. You shouldn't be afraid to call them with questions, and it has to be somebody I think that's been through it already. And I think that's something that everyone kind of touched on. Is how I pick a mentor is I want them to already be in a place that I aspire to get to. So someone said, if you find that you're the smartest person in the room, find another room. So I want a person that's already in that next room that I'm trying to get to, and I'm trying to have them coach me into, wherever that is. Commissioner Evangelista, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, this one is for Attorney Walker. So for those of you who are watching us, quite frankly, I'm not embarrassed to say that you are actually watching some of my mentors. I mean, JohnHope, Dr. Christian, Attorney Walker. Sometimes it's almost like when you're looking for someone to get into a relationship with, this happens to be a professional one, you're looking all over the place. The person's right next to you. In my instance, it was my parents before they passed away. They were my first mentors, and then you just move out. So you many times, because of your professional and what you do, you need to find that expertise. But sometimes it's just life 101 that will actually make you get over that hump on the road to success. So I don't want you to think that you have to invest great sums of money. Do that for your particular area of expertise that you're seeking the assistance with, but don't feel embarrassed to reach out to that person next to you who may actually, it may be your neighbor. They may live in the condo next to you. They may live in the house 2 homes away. Just seek them out, especially if you know what they're doing and it's a similar field. Or it's not in your field, but you need that area of expertise, like Dr. Christian mentioned, a financial background. I'm not embarrassed to say I reached out to JohnHope the other day to ask him about where do you do your day trading? Because my daughter wants to get involved. You know, he doesn't brag about what he does in his financial side in terms of day trading, but I knew he did it. He mentioned to me. So all I'm saying is reach out. Sometimes it's right next to you, right in your very backyard.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we have a lot of experts around us that we tend to take for granted, right? Like no one is knows everything, but some of us, we know a lot. You know, I reach out to Key all the time with legal questions, right? I reach out to, Commissioner Evangelista about questions with government. You know, he is an expert on government. So there's a lot of people around you that you can bend their ear. So I think as entrepreneurs, it's good to have that. Commissioner Evangelista, since we are still with you, I wanted to ask, this is something that's happened to me a couple of times this year, doing stuff in and around COVID. How should entrepreneurs deal with unforeseen price increases? I had a situation where my client bought a set of goods from me. Let's say that I was getting them for about $14 per unit. And because of COVID, the price was just, it was unstable, right? So my supplier all of a sudden said, you know what, this thing costs $25 per unit. And I already had the client locked in at a certain price. And I had no choice but to go back and say, hey, there's no way I can afford to buy this from someone, ship it here, deliver it to you for 25 bucks a unit. That's what I paid to get my hands on it. How do you recommend that we deal with these situations?
Sure. So as you can imagine, I've been getting those calls in the office. And what we do is we actually launch a paper investigation, either willingly or via subpoena, where we request the actual invoice from at which you purchase versus what you retail. And, perhaps I'm not in the business of running an operation right now, but perhaps you need to insert a force majeure kind of clause in when you're actually providing a quotation, so that in the event it changes from the time you close that deal, you can still go back and readjust. Because COVID-19 has taught us a lot. Things change rapidly based on supply and demand, and many of the supplies that we are procuring here in the U.S. Virgin Islands, we're competing internationally, not even South Florida at this point in time. And so as far as the regulator, when we look at that, we will simply look at the invoice price that which you purchase that at wholesale or even retail to you, and we'll just ensure that whatever your markup is not gouging, so that you're actually putting the customer leaving the customer with an empty wallet. So hopefully that answered your question. But for those people in the industry of selling items or even services, it's something that, as long as I think you're upfront and honest, it's highly unlikely a customer will get upset, unless of course you've locked in something, or we have Attorney Walker on the line. You failed to do something, then at that point I think you need to eat the cost, because for you to pass something on to someone that they've already signed, sealed, and delivered, they've tendered their payment to you, I think that's a totally different issue, and I'll leave that for Attorney Walker. Don't charge me for that advice.
I know for me, that was a hard thing after COVID, like getting face masks. At one point, I was like, I'm not even gonna buy it, because the patients and the customers didn't understand, like, what I could have gotten for $4 for a count of 50 was now like $75 for a count of 50. So I didn't want to go through the hassle or the argument. So I stopped carrying them.
Yeah. I mean,
JohnHope, one of the things that I tell businesses, and that's why what we do is, since I got into my current office, is we educate before we regulate. You need to educate your consumers. And I think at the end of the day, an educated consumer, hopefully they don't get it from the wrong news source. But if you give them real-time information that's legit, if they don't understand it at that point, you've done your part. And literally, the DLCA is not going to come after you for engaging in unfair trade or unfair business practice, because in fact you've been straight up and you're honest.
Yeah, I mean that's how I ended up solving that particular instance.
But what did you do with that in that instance?
I just went and said, you know what, this was unforeseen, and then, this was what I'd proposed to sell it to you for, but meet me in the middle. And I showed them my invoice. I said, hey, all of a sudden this thing that was costing me 14 is now costing me 25. I showed them the shipping invoice from VI Cargo, plus I had to truck it overland from, I think, Arizona to VI Cargo in Miami. So once I added all of that up, they're like, all right, yeah, I get it, right? They were like, I get it. So, they obviously, I think at some point she told me, she was like, well, somebody else, was selling it for this, but then the only reason I'm talking to you is because, they can't get it. I'm like, well, yeah, well, that's why they can't get it, is because this is so scarce at this day and time. But she understood, and we worked it out, and everything was fine. But I have heard of some situations or some instances where, consumers were pissed off.
Yeah, that's why I think we need to, so coming from the representative of consumers right now, but I also help businesses is, when you are in business, just be as honest as you should be, because just pretend you are the consumer at one point in time. That's why I tell all businesses who get upset with me, I says, even though you own this big entity, you need to go into another shop and be the buyer. So just remember that karma.
Yeah.
And also pick your battles, because I find that consumers, customers, clients are now weaponized with social media. So, and that goes back to what I said earlier, you can't necessarily service or do business with everyone. So you could be right. You could be entitled to take a certain position as a business owner, but the repercussions or the fallout from that may not be worth it. Like, I would quicker, refund someone's money or advise a client to refund someone's money than to have them engage in a lengthy back and forth under those circumstances. We see it all the time on Facebook. If someone got bad service at a restaurant, they go and they blast the restaurant to everyone. It's just not worth it in the long run to have that circulating in social media like that. So I think in addition to looking at the legality of everything, you just also need to just exercise judgment. What is this battle worth to my business? And then you make a decision based on that.
That's a great point. Picking and choosing your battles, even if you end up winning, right? Like, let's say you went into a lengthy legal battle. Even if you end up quote unquote winning, that took your time away from running your business for X amount of time while you sorted that out. So was it really a win? You probably could have doubled your sales in the 2 years it took you to sort out that lawsuit, right? So, you just have to pick and choose your battles very carefully.
And to piggyback on the conversation, as far as DLCA goes, when a complaint comes in regarding pricing into our office, that's the first line of defense that we share with the vendor is, you have a consumer coming in complaining about something that's $500. Instead of wasting your time in small claims court, address it. You have somebody coming in with an issue that costs more than $10,000. By the time you start paying your legal fees to do discovery, you've already taken care of this $12,000 issue. Just address it. And as a matter of fact, they're willing to go halfway for $6,000. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
So figure out what's your return on investment as far as expense and time and money, and then that's how you can deal with any pricing issues you may have.
Can you talk a little bit more about how that process works?
Sure. So what happens is when a consumer files a complaint, we immediately submit that complaint and request a response from the vendor. And then at that point, we create an opportunity to settle the matter. And if that doesn't work out, then we elevate it to the point where if we have to have a formal hearing, we do. And depending on the decision, the party who loses can actually file a writ of review with the Superior Court after my decision is final. But for those of you who have been in the courthouse lately, even if you've been in there for a criminal matter, COVID-19 has really stymied the court process, and any civil matter is at a standstill because they're not having any jury trials and very rare bench trials, if at all. But Attorney Walker can answer that question. So, take care of your business. If it's a simple pricing issue and it won't hurt your business, just address it.
Yeah.
Oh, and don't argue with the customer on Facebook either.
Great point.
Please don't do it.
That court has
You'll never win that battle.
That jury's awake 24/7. So even the jury is working on Facebook. So
absolutely. Jed, I wanted to interject here just for a minute to see if any of our participants had any questions for the panelists. They've been a little quiet tonight. I know they've engaged at some points, but does any of the participants have any questions for our panelists? You have a wide array of expertise here on this panel tonight. So pick their brains. Does anyone have a question? There has to be a burning question.
Good evening. This is Gail Cowwood Hill.
Good evening.
Good evening, Gail.
Good evening.
Gail, you can go ahead and ask your question.
All right, maybe she's.
I'm not sure if maybe she got disconnected. Does someone else would like to ask a question?
Hi, this is Katisha. Hi, Key. Hi, Ricky.
I will go next, Katisha. Good evening.
I know I was trying. Good evening. Good evening. So I asked Jed a question earlier about entrepreneurs acquiring small business insurance. And Jed, I'm not questioning or your guidance, but I would like to know, especially from a legal perspective, Key and maybe Ricky, or anyone else on the panel, what are your thoughts about acquiring small business insurance, especially for if you're selling products and online from the, your store is online?
I'm just going to take a quick stab at it, and then I'll turn it over to Attorney Walker. If Attorney Walker serves you with papers and you don't have your business insurance to protect the items that you're selling, whether it's a manufacturing defect, if in fact you're doing it, whatever insurance you need to take, it's going to be more affordable for you to buy that insurance today than deal with the paperwork that she's going to serve you tomorrow. So that's my advice.
Thanks for that perspective. Key?
It depends on the cost of insurance relative to the what you're generating as far as revenue in your business, and then relative to your risk. So there's not a simple answer to that. So for instance, as a doctor, a medical doctor, you for sure want to have medical malpractice insurance, right? Same thing with lawyers. If you're running a business that has a high traffic area, for instance, possibly like Keisha's Pharmacy, you want to make sure you have great commercial coverage for any slip and falls or anything like that in your business. We live in a hurricane-prone zone. I think we all saw in 2017 the value of business interruption insurance to the extent that you can afford it. So you do the cost benefit analysis and you weigh it against your risk. And I would definitely talk to people in that same industry. How often have you been sued for this? What's the worst thing that ever happened, in your business relative to this type of risk? And then you also have to look at the regulations, because there are some laws and regulations out there that require you to have insurance, depending on the type of work or services that you're providing. So in my estimation, insurance is a good thing, but you also have to be able to afford it. And it has to make sense.
Did I hear you say it was an online business?
Yes, correct, online.
Yeah. I have a company that I don't work in any longer, but I still own a piece of that sells children's furniture. We sell bunk beds online. And we have a warehouse in Sanford that's a partner of ours under a different company. And of course, the warehouse has massive amounts of insurance based on it being a fairly dangerous place to work with forklifts and trucks coming in and things like that. But our online section of our business we've had for over a decade, and just moving products online, it's really just a marketing function, right? And And we actually don't have any sort of insurance with that business. It's probably the only business I've ever had that doesn't have insurance of some sort. And we've been okay with it, but it doesn't mean we necessarily always would have been. I mean, a mother could sue because her son or daughter fell off of the top bunk or something, right? And maybe they blamed it on a safety issue. Of course, we would get the manufacturer involved, right? And claim that it was not our fault, but we would have to pay for attorney's fees and things like that just to defend ourselves. We make sure that the products we sell are all certified and have the standard safety features. So I think that it obviously being online probably lowers your risk a lot. In the music festival, I think we've had a lawsuit every single year that we've ever done the festival. So, I think that being online probably lowers it a lot. I think that it depends again on the product that you're selling too. If you're selling a product that has a high risk factor to it, or if you're selling a product that, if you're selling trampolines online, that's probably a high risk item. If you're selling, I don't know, number 2 pencils and, reams of paper, it's probably pretty low risk, right? So that would be my thought process on it. I think as your business gets bigger and the amount of revenue that's generating, that means you have more to lose. Insurance becomes more important. But if you're just getting started and you're online, I think you just got to weigh the risks.
Okay, great. Thank you. All the different responses have been really helpful. So thank you all.
It's a lot of different perspectives. So it's good that you hear, all the different perspectives. So I appreciate everyone chiming in. Keisha.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions from the group?
Good evening. I have a question. This question I had asked in the apparel forum a couple of weeks ago, and now that we have the commissioner online, I think he can better provide guidance as to if there's any such thing or what is the best so we can proceed if there's I had mentioned that as a t-shirt vendor, an online t-shirt vendor, I basically purchase my shirt directly from t-shirt companies. And as of recently, I guess for tax purposes, they're now requiring that certain sellers have this thing called a reseller certificate. I've seen it from many states, but I haven't seen that here or something similar to it in the Virgin Islands. I wanted to know if you've ever heard of such a thing, and if there is something in existence, how can online vendors go about getting it, or can we just use our trade name certificate or our current licenses to suffice for that reseller certificate?
So I think the question is, you're asking if we have a reseller certificate, number one, and number two, have I heard of it? I've heard of it, but in terms of you, essentially, since you're an online retailer, there's a license for that. But in terms of a reseller certificate, I don't think we actually have a business license for that.
Because what exactly is happening
So
now
who's
is
requesting this certificate from you?
those like Bella Canvas, like the original t-shirt vendors like Gildan, Bella Canvas, they're not allowing us to buy in bulk unless we have a reseller certificate, because they're basically saying that we're purchasing the shirts from them in bulk, but we're customizing them and adding our own designs on them to resell. I don't know if it's a tax purpose thing, but being that it's not something that's well known in the Virgin Islands, it kind of poses a difficulty for me in the event that I want to purchase items in bulk.
I'm going to give you my, I'll post my number now in the chat. Call me, text me tomorrow, call me tomorrow. Let's see if we can help you work this through. Because maybe they may want you to have an importer's license, something extra, but let's work through it. I'll put my number now in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And also your email address if possible.
All right, I'm going to put Kusa's cell number right now.
You can do that. Most of everybody has it already, so it's okay. Do we have any other questions? Nothing?
Hi, this is Katisha again. I don't have a question. I just have a comment to the young lady. I think it's Janelle. Regarding your issue, I know Ricky's gonna help you out, but I was just curious though. Have you sort of explained the uniqueness of the territory in terms of how we do business, and we don't necessarily have sales tax, to see if they would be willing to accept, say, your a copy of your business license or your registration for your business, as opposed to the reseller certificate?
I haven't actually spoken to actual person because the mechanisms that they've used is online, electronic. I usually don't get the opportunity to get that far. They just usually decline you, shut you down one time if you're unable to provide that particular document.
Yeah, I did, because I'm in the apparel industry as well. I do see where they would reject you online, but when you get that rejection, just as a recommendation, maybe just calling their customer service number may be a viable option also.
I had gotten a couple suggestions from some young ladies that were also in the on the forum. But I just wanted to know if there was anything specific that the Virgin Islands had that maybe I did not know or wasn't aware of.
Fair enough.
Cool, thank
You're welcome.
Thank you, Katisha.
I do have a question from a participant in the group. They wanted to know how hard is it? I know we kind of touched on this earlier, especially Will touched on it. How hard is it to increase your price after you've provided a service for the same price?
To the same customer, it's hard to keep going back and increasing your price on them. You almost have to justify it, or those customers, like in my ad agency days, I had some guys that were with me for 8 years, 9 years, and then when we started to have that conversation, they knew that they were getting a great deal for the level of service that our agency was providing, because they had watched us grow over the years, and they appreciated that we had kept their pricing lower for a considerable amount of time. And so some people would stick around because they just believed that they were getting enough value for that increased price. So I think it comes down to the value you're providing and their ability to pay. If the client doesn't have the ability to pay, then there's nothing you're going to do to save that relationship. If they do have the ability to pay and you're providing enough value to them, then they will pay for it. They will pay the increase in price because they value what you're providing. So focus on value, focus on providing them with great service or great products, and then you should be able to increase that price over time.
I find it easier to increase a price on a client when there's the addition of a new project or a new case. I think it's more difficult to do it in the middle of an ongoing project. I mean, although in my retainer agreements I'm entitled to, I pick a date usually at the start of a new year when I increase my rates, and that applies to all new incoming clients. And then I kind of pick and choose the ongoing clients, and I kind of have to do like a cost benefit analysis, because sometimes you have long-term clients that just keep sending you different work, and then because of the consistent stream of work from that client, I may not raise the price on them.
It sounds like you and I had very similar business growth, pricing growth strategies.
Yeah, there's definitely a balancing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it can be done, and I know tons of lawyers and law firms do it, but it really, to me, also depends on those relationships that you have, especially those clients who've been with you from the first day that you opened your office. Yeah, so.
Yeah. I mean, as you can see, with all of this stuff, it depends, right? There might be a reason. I mean, if the client's doing a ton of invoices with you, a ton of revenue with you every year, you know, it might, you probably could justify keeping them on, right? Because they keep everyone busy. You might not make a ton of money on them, but it keeps people busy. You know, I would say someone that you are making money on, that is, you know, it's a $2,000 project a year, that's probably not a client that you need to have around. Any more questions? We are getting close to 9 p.m. Any more questions? Any thoughts from the group?
Good evening, Marie here.
Hey, how you doing?
My only question would have been pertaining to the resellers issue. So when Mr. Batiste, when Ricky, when he comes up with the solution, my email is in the chat. I want to know if he can email me as well.
Okay, we'll make sure that
I just responded in the chat to Marie. Yes, I had responded earlier, but it looks like it was just going to Ms. Kusa Holloway and VIEDA. So I just responded to yes, Marie, of course.
Thanks much.
You're welcome.
And Commissioner Evangelista, if you want to, you can definitely provide us with that information, and our marketing department can send it out to everyone who was registered tonight.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Commissioner. I have a question from Simile. What is the greatest lesson each of you have learned since being in business?
So many to choose from.
I could name a few. Don't be afraid to take a risk.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to ask questions if you need help. Always follow up. Even for me, I think, and that's one of the biggest things people like about neighborhood pharmacy is following up. So if there's an issue that a patient has, always, or if there's a concern, I'll always follow up. I know some of the times we take it personal because it's our business, but you have to sit back, hear what the person is saying, take it into consideration without your feelings being involved.
Good point.
So I think my top three is to keep learning. So you just have to constantly search out for new information and how to improve yourself, improve your business, improve your services, and, you know, create opportunities for your employees to learn more as well. And hand in hand with that is just really be very deliberate and intentional with who you spend your time with. So I found that from the transition of just being a lawyer to becoming a business owner, to becoming a somewhat satisfied business owner, I just found that my circle changed. Because I find now that I'm constantly talking to other people who have businesses, who's interested in business, who's interested in developing, who's interested in growing. Even on this panel, I just had dinner with Keisha last night, had no idea that we were on the same panel for tonight until a couple hours ago, right? But, you know, we're in the same span, we're in the same circle. So I think it's just important to surround yourself with positive energy and people who that will contribute to where you're trying to get to in your life or where you're trying to get to in your business. And then of course, the biggie is be very selective with who you hire to work in your business. Be very careful with who you have representing your brand, you know, how your telephone is answered, how people are treated when they come into your business, how they conduct themselves outside of the business, especially how they conduct themselves on social media. just be really, really careful in who you bring into your company or anything that you're doing.
All great feedback.
Yeah, I would say to add to that in regards to who you're hiring, I always try to hire people that are smarter than me in that specific position. So I tend to try to know a little about a lot, meaning I really understand our entire business and I understand each position in the business and what has to be done and to make this machine work. But when I go to hire a UI UX designer, for example, that person has to be able to design way better than I could do myself. And when I hire the developer, they need to be able to write code way better than myself. And when I hire my finance guy, he needs to understand it better than I could, right? And so focus on hiring people that are better than you at that position, and you'll build a great company. So people is a big part. I think another one that I've stuck to is always focus on working on the business rather than in the business. If you want to build a big company that you can eventually sell to somebody else, or maybe one day not have to work in it and just sit back and get mailbox money, the way that happens is you build a business that can work without you. And if you're working in the business all the time, that's not going to happen, right? And so, you know, and sometimes that's hard for service based. But actually, I heard earlier, I think your coach, you know, she's like CEO now, right? And she's not practicing the attorney. She has attorneys working in that business, and she's
Correct.
created that business to stand on its own. And so at first, you're going to have to work in the business, but always set time aside to continue working on the business and make sure that you're replacing yourself, constantly replacing yourself, and you can build a machine that outlasts you. And
That's great feedback, Will. That is fantastic feedback. I think we tend to get caught up working in the business for too long, and then you look up and you spend a lot of time doing things that somebody else could have done, right? Marketing is probably one of those things that folks think that they can take on themselves, but is it best off for your business for you to be the one running the social media page, right? So that's there's many examples of things like that.
And support other businesses as well. So I'd love to see when people share posts about other small businesses. I think it's great to have business owners kind of supporting each other in the struggle of operating businesses. And I think it also comes back to you. Every time I refer someone to someone else, another lawyer, another business owner, I feel like it comes back to me tenfold. So.
Hi, this is Katisha. I have a question. Not sure if you can answer it, but I'll see. If you are looking to hire someone for contractual services, generally speaking, what are some key elements that the contract should include? And I know it kind of leans on the legal side of it, but I've been on couple webinars for entrepreneurs where it is say, make sure a contract has, have these key things in there at a minimum, without necessarily getting like legal advice or going into the intricacies of the contract. But just generally speaking, what are some tips you would share in terms of if you're going to contract some services for your business, what are some things that your contract should at least have in there?
One, if I'm not an attorney, but I've done a lot of legal agreements that I've had to review over the years, and even editing some templates that I had corporate attorneys of mine create for my business, and then I would just kind of edit those templates for clients. And but on an independent contractor agreement, which is one that I've used for a long time, because my ad agency, we would sometimes hire independent contractors to scale up and scale down for large project work. One important one is to make sure that we had kind of a work for hire clause in there where we owned the rights to everything that they did, especially when you're talking about creative work where there might be copyrights involved and things like that. And so that tends to be in the marketing realm. If you're hiring photographers or writers or graphic designers, just make sure that you're getting the rights to all that creative work for your business, because you could be paying them to create it and they may maintain the rights to it, and that is a possibility. So work for hire is, I think, a big one that you would want to include.
The first thing that you'd want to do is hire a lawyer to do the agreement. You see what I did? You see what I did there? You see how that works?
I knew that was exactly where this was going.
But
I was waiting for it, Jed.
But in the event that you don't do that, there are definitely two things that you should do. Check out Department of Labor's website and their rules and regulations, because if you get sued for wrongful termination, or if someone sues you or files an unemployment compensation claim and you say, well, they weren't an employee, they were a contractor, labor is going to turn around and say to you, well, they're not a contractor just because you say so. And there's a list of factors that they'll look at and consider to determine whether this person was an employee or a contractor. Did they have set times and days for work? Who provided the equipment that this person used to perform the work. So there's a list of factors that you can look at. And also you want to talk to your accountant or bookkeeper, because for tax purposes, you can get audited, and who you're treating as a contractor, the IRB or IRS can come back and say, no, they were really an employee and you should have been taking X, Y, and Z out of their paychecks and paying certain taxes for this. So you want to look at those rules and regulations and those factors and make sure that the engagement that you've set up for this contractor is consistent with what Department of Labor and what IRS or IRB considers a contractor to be.
And if you don't happen to call Attorney Walker or any of her colleagues, you can also check with the SBDC Center, where they have a lot of information regarding entrepreneur, startups, existing, and things upon that nature. So check with SBDC also.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Actually, I do have an attorney that I work with, but I asked the question because, I'm learning these things because of, like you said, Key, you have to keep learning. So I'm learning these things, but sometimes as a new entrepreneur, you may not know to ask these questions, or know that if you can't afford the attorney, you can go to the other resource like Ricky mentioned. So, just wanted to ask that question so others who may not know, just know that there are these other resources and other things to consider when contracting services.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're going to have to start wrapping up now, Jed. Would you like to say some final remarks before we end?
Sure. First off, thanks for everyone for joining in tonight. It was a very spirited discussion. I hope you guys got as much out of it as we did. Also want to thank KUSA and the EDA for putting this together. And I want to give a special thanks to every member of the panel, Commissioner Evangelista, Key Walker, William Royale, Dr. Keisha Christian. As a small token of my appreciation, there is a gift card with your name on it to the Galleon. I will email details to you later. But please enjoy a dinner out on me, or at least, a start of a dinner. You're welcome to spend more than the gift card allows, but that's a small token of my appreciation for spending some time with the group. So thanks for the time.
Thank you. We were just talking about going to the Galleon with my wife the other night. So that's awesome. Appreciate that.
There you go, William. Thank you, Jed.
No problem.
All right.
Hi, Jed. Question. Did you say your email is on the last slide?
Yes. Oh, sorry. No, not in this one. I will make sure the one that gets out there, it's on the last slide. So that's typically how I end the slide deck. So the one that I published and sent to KUSA, I will make sure my contact information is in there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Good night,
But
everyone.
before we go, I would
Yes.
like to say a special thank you to Jed JohnHope for a wonderful presentation once again. You hit on all of the important factors, and I think our participants really gained a good knowledge. Yes, Will, definitely a hand clap for him. And also, I would like to thank our panelists, Attorney Key Walker, Dr. Keisha Christian, Mr. William Royal, and of course, Mr. Commissioner Evangelista for being here tonight, taking time out of your busy schedule. And of course, our participants. I know it's not easy, probably working all day in your business or even working your full-time job, and then committing and investing in yourself for another 4 hours here with us. But it was a lively discussion. We thank you so much for participating. EDA strives to be a partner on your entrepreneurial endeavors. So please, I've put my email address in the group chat. If anyone needs any further information. Also, EDA is right now running a e-marketing series, and it's free at no cost. You can go to our website, usvieda.org, and you can sign up for any one of them. They will be running until, I believe it's April, and they're usually 1 hour sessions. In addition to that, EDA works very closely with SBDC, SBA to bring you webinars. There are some new changes that just happened this week in regards to the Payment Protection Program. EDA is a qualified lender for the Payment Protection Program. So if you're needing that capital infusion for your business or anything else, please reach out to us. You can always reach out to us via my email, cholloway@usvieda.org or at info@usvieda.org, or you can go onto our website to find out about upcoming webinars that we will be having in regards to any type of entrepreneurial or business help. Thank you all so much for attending tonight. God bless, and please stay safe.
Thank you.
Night, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.